Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. Yahusha, living water. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. I'll sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I'll sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my God. I sing out with praise to you, Yahusha. Living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. Yahusha, living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. I sing out with praise to you. Your name is beautiful to me, my King. I sing out with praise to you. My heart desires to honor you, my God. I sing out with praise to you, Yahusha. Living Torah, Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah. Baruch haba b'Shem Yahuwah.
Hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah, our Elohim. Yahuwah is one. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And the second one is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Everybody's here. Oh, man, it's been a long week. Seems like a long one this time. But nevertheless, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shabbat! Yay, it's Shabbat. Day of delight. Day of Yahuwah. Yahuwah's rest day. We get to congregate with the beloved of Yahuwah. We get to worship and spend lots of time with Yahuwah. And there's no better conversation in this world but the one we're going to have this evening. All about Yahuwah and Yahuwah's people. What a conversation we'll have this evening. Now, some people been complaining a little bit that I haven't, these studies of ours haven't been long enough lately. I've been cutting them short. So in order to try to make others happy, we're going to have a long study this evening. Go figure. Okay, well, let me say hello to a few people, and then we're going to get started. This evening's study is about who are the Gentiles? Who are the Gentiles? Now, I'm going to warn you, this is going to get a little bit different from a lot of things you all have heard, but bear with me. And I think the scriptures of truth will speak for itself in the end. We all like to get our feathers ruffled, jump up and down. Well, I don't believe that. That's not what I've heard. I disagree with that. And within 2 or 3 minutes, with no reserve, no regard to listening to the end, we got to listen to the end. We got to take all evidence into account. We have to put on a minds of exegesis, not eisegesis. That's cherry picking club. We don't want to go there. So, put all your knowledge, everything you've been taught in reserve. Pray to Yahuwah. Ask him to open up your eyes and ears to receive his message this evening. Ask him for edification of his word. And hopefully we all come out of this evening with a little bit more knowledge of Yahuwah than we had before we began. So here we go. Put yourself in reserve, folks, because you're going to hear a lot of stuff that you haven't heard before. So here we go. Sandra Brunston. Thank you for being here every week on time. First one every week, Sandra. You're an amazing woman. Brother Shannon Livingston, glad you're here. Sister Yami, glad you're here. Levi Davis, glad you're here. Peggy Russell, glad you're here. Teresa, glad you made it. Glad you're here, Teresa. Mr. Three Jobs, glad you're here, John. Sharon C., glad you're here. Ike, glad you're here, brother. Phil Dickey, glad you're here. Valerie, glad you're here. Kate Connell, glad you're here. Sister Laura Coker, glad you're here. Ladder Rain, glad you're here. Ridge Hill Jilly, glad you're here. Raul Koto, I don't see you on here, brother, but I'll bet you're watching. So glad you're here, brother. Okay, so we got some people trickling in here, but we'll go ahead and get started. Glad to see you all here. All right, so if you have your BYNV, let's go ahead and turn to Genesis. Okay, Raul, cool. So this is going to start out a little strange, and but then it's going to clear up as we get going through this. We all know about Creation Week, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Creation Week. We all know that Yahusha is the firstborn of all creation. And so Elohim said, let light come to be. He created Yahusha and separated the good from the darkness. And he called Yahusha that it was good. The light was good. He separated that light from the darkness. And then he made the great lights for the calendar to give us the time. On the fourth day came the sun, the moon, and the stars. And we won't get into the secret prophecy of Yahuwah here because we just simply do not have enough time. And so basically, I'm going to skip down through all that because I think most of us know everything about that. But I do want to start right at, I want to say the fifth day. It might be the best place to start on this, and try to get through Genesis as quickly as possible, and then so we can get into the heart of the matter here. But here we go. I'm going to start at Genesis 1, verse 20, and like I said, I'm in the BYNB. And Elohim said, "Let the Mayim teem with shoals of living creatures, and let birds fly above the Eretz on the facial surface of the Shemayim." And Elohim, Aleph and Tau, created great sea creatures, and every living creature that moves, with which the Mayim teemed, according to their kind. Now that's going to be very important in this evening's study. Their kind, K-I-N-D. So carry that over because it's going to be an important word as we continue to study. According to their kind. And every winged bird according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Okay, so what is this kind? What would this be talking about? So living creatures and their kind, the birds and their kind, things like that. So this would be things that are made like them and are them, perhaps maybe different colors, different shapes, different sizes, but nevertheless different sounds coming out of their mouth, whatever, but it's their kind. Okay, so they're, in other words, they're one blood. Okay, they're one species with one blood. All right. Okay, so that's what a kind is. So if you fall into a kind, if you were a bird, you would be from the bird kind. All right. Okay, so Elohim blessed them, saying, "Bear fruit and increase." Well, bearing fruit here is obviously offspring, and so would be babies, and increase would obviously mean to multiply, to increase, to make more of your kind. All right. And so they were commanded to do that by the Creator. Shaul of Yisrael. Glad you're here, brother. And fill the mayim in the yamim, and that means water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the arets. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fifth yom. So here we see that living creatures were created. There was no life in the first 4,000 years, if we wanted to look at it that way. Why? Because there was no way of getting a pardon. There was no remission for sins yet. So man remained dead for 4,000 years. But I don't want to get all into that. We want to keep going here. And Elohim said, let the Eretz bring forth the living creature. So that would be creatures that breathe the breath of life, right? According to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures and beasts of the Eretz, according to its kind. And it came to be so. And Elohim, the leaf and taw, made the beast of the Eretz, according to its kind, livestock according to its kind, and all that creep on the Eretz according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, breathe into Neshah, or Adam, or humanity, or mankind. All right, I like seeing mankind here because he just got talking about all the different kinds. And mankind is mankind. We can call it humanity if we want to, but really it's mankind. We're all made of the same flesh, of the same blood. We're all made of dust. We're all made of one blood. And we'll get into that. So mankind is what I like seeing here. A shared essence. What's that mean? That means mankind has a shared essence. So we belong in the same group. We're the same character, same likes, dislikes, this type of stuff. Although we're all different individuals, as far as a group goes, we have a shared essence. I don't know about you guys, but I've been to quite a few countries. I'm sure a lot of you military people have too on here. And people are all the same. They all have a shared essence for sure. I don't see any different people. Everybody's the same. If you can understand their language, you can see they have the same worries, the same hopes, the same dreams. Same things turn their stomach. They all know right from wrong. Everybody's the same. Shared essence with a shared character. Shared character even. Mankind. Does not the animal kind have the same thing? Yeah, they do. A dog's got the same character as another dog. Sure they do. And let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the Shemayim, and over the livestock, and over all the Eretz, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the Eretz. So mankind here has been given dominance over all the other kinds. So mankind shares his essence, he shares his character, and he's been given dominion over all the other kinds. And Elohim, the leaf and the taw, created the man in his essence. So not only does mankind share an essence and a character, but apparently we share an essence with Yahuwah, with the Creator. And Elohim created the man in his essence. So we have a shared essence, not only among ourselves, but with our Creator as well. In the essence of Elohim, he created them, or him. He created him. This would be singular. Male and female, that's plural. He created them, that's plural. Okay. All right, so there seems to be something going on here, and what happened with this creation on day 6. So it seems to be saying that mankind, with a shared essence and with shared character, means plural. If you're sharing something with somebody, then there's got to be somebody else there. You can't share it with yourself. And then mankind also shares his shared essence, and his shared character is created in the essence of Yahuwah. So we also share an essence with Yahuwah. You see that? You got to be more than one if it's shared. It's pretty obvious. Male and female, he created them. Okay, so it sounds like to me, Yahuwah created mankind along with all the other kinds. If we put it in context, because he just got done talking about all the different kinds that he created, right? Made the beast of the earth according to its kind, the livestock according to its kind, everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind, everything according to its kind, and then he went into mankind, which has a shared essence and a shared character, meaning more than one. Hang on a minute. Kua wasn't made yet out of the rib. She wasn't formed from the ground like the man was, like mankind was, and the beast were. Now people say, well, the beasts weren't formed out of the ground, Brother Mark. He spoke them into existence. That's not what Scripture says. Scripture says he formed them, the beasts out of the ground, just like he did mankind. He said, let there be light. So obviously he spoke his body of light, firstborn of all creation, into existence. But Scripture says he formed man from the dust and also the beasts. You've never read that before? Well, just turn the page over here real quick and go to Genesis 2, verse 19. So Genesis 2, verse 19 says, and from the ground, Yahuwah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the Shamayim, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. So he did create them, formed them from the dust. Okay, but here again, if we read very, very closely, we see that something else happened. Obviously, it had to. Okay, so in Genesis 1, we read about the creation of the Eretz and the Shemayim and everything that's in it. And it goes on here, okay, and up into Genesis 2. Then all of a sudden, it kind of switches gears. So I'm going to finish reading Genesis 1, and then I want to talk just a little bit about this before we go into Genesis 2. And Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, bear fruit and increase, and fill the eretz and subdue it. Speaking of them, did we forget where we left off? Elohim created him, male and female, he created them. And Elohim blessed them, that's plural. And Elohim said to them with a shared essence, remember, and a shared character. Bear fruit and increase. Have children. Make more of yourself. Procreate. And fill the eretz and subdue it. Take control. And rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the Shemayim and over the creatures moving on the eretz. So all this must have been, everything was created. And Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of the eretz, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it is for food. And to every beast of the Arats, and to every bird of the Shemaim, and to every creeping creature on the Arats, in which there is life, Aleph and Taw. Every green plant is for food, and it came to be so. And Elohim, Aleph and Taw, saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the sixth day. Okay. Now, there's about a half a dozen interpretations of Genesis in the beginning out there. And I've studied all of them and even more. And some of them aren't even worth your time. But there's two that really stand out. And those two are that Yahuwah in the beginning created the Arets, and he created the Shemaim, all the plants, all the water, all the fish, all the birds, all the beasts, everything, including mankind in the first week, first 6 days. Speaking that mankind was another race, but not necessarily Adam, because Kua wasn't formed yet, wasn't formed out of Adam's rib yet. Okay, and so the other one says that Adam and Kua were the mankind that was created. And so then chapter 2 would simply be a duplicate of chapter 1, with just a more elaborating more on the creation of mankind, but not really a second, not more work of Yahuwah where he could continue to create after the Shabbat. All right. And so with that theory, then, Cain and Abel came, right? Well, who was Abel's wife? Who was Cain's wife? Who was Cain afraid of? And what was Yahuwah talking about? Or who was Yahuwah talking about when he said, if anyone finds Cain, you're not allowed to hurt him, or you'll be trouble come on you sevenfold. Who was he referring to? Okay. And so they go on with that and say, well, Adam and Eve had more children. They had sons and daughters in the meantime. Between the death of Abel and the birth of Sheth, they had more sons and daughters. And then after Seth was born, they continued to breed for another 130 years, and even had more sons and daughters. And so, we got to, believe then that, the population came through incest, which they say incest didn't exist back then because how new and clean and pure the human DNA was, that it wouldn't have affected brother and sister breeding like it does today. And, okay, so that's that. And then the other one is, like I said, he created mankind along with all the other kinds. Okay, and then so Cain would have, when he was thrown out of the family, basically he was thrown out of the family of Yahuwah, and he was a vagabond and a wanderer, settled on the east of Eden, and found his wife. Okay, and so would have been one of these mankinds. Okay, a womankind, if you will. All right, so those are really the two theories that really have the most weight. The other ones I think are a little bit out there, even farther. So we're going to look at this and see, maybe we can determine what Yahuwah is up to, what Yahuwah's plan is all along. What was he doing? How did how did all this happen? How did it come about? Who was Cain afraid of? Who was Yahuwah referring to? And who did Cain marry? Things like this. Okay, so let's look at 2 here now. I don't want to we'll go into the Shabbat. And then we get down into, let's just say, probably need to go to 4 here. 5. Okay, so he rested on the Shabbat. Okay, and then we'll pick it up in 2:5. Now, no shrub on the field was yet on the eretz, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahuwah Elohim had not sent rain on the eretz, and there was no man to till the ground. Now, this is kind of strange, is it not? Okay, we know it didn't rain until the deluge, till Noah's flood. Okay, when he opened up the windows of the Shemayim and the fountains beneath come bursting up out of the ground, right, and flooded the earth. Probably a canopy of water surrounded the earth, right, and blocked out the rays of the sun and stuff like that as a protection, and it collapsed on the earth. So there was no rain until Noah's flood. And so it says here that there was no man to till the ground, which sounds really weird. There was no plants in the field. No rain was sent, no shrubs in the field. What in the world? Is this talking about just the same arrest that we just read about in chapter 1? That was completed and was very good? Doesn't sound like it. Unless he's going all the way back to day 1, which wouldn't even make any sense. Why would he do that? See what I'm saying? So this seems to be like a new beginning of something else, beginning in the 2nd week. So Hebrew tradition says that Adam and Kua fell on the 3rd day after the Shabbat, or the 10th day is when they fell. So this seems to be something he's doing something different, because it surely isn't talking about Genesis 1, because it was fully developed, fully created. His work was done. And it says up here that he rested from all his work on the 7th day. 2 says, and on the 7th day Elohim halted his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. So does that mean he totally stopped? It really doesn't say that, but it does say he rested and he did all that other stuff and then rested. So this seems to be either starting back over on day 1 of creation, after day 1, or it's just talking about something else. So let's read on and see if we can make some sense on that. But a mist went up from the eretz and watered the entire surface of the ground. Okay. And Yahuwah Elohim formed the man, and that's singular, out of the dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. But up here, don't forget it says, and there was no man to till the ground. What ground? In Genesis, he created mankind and told him to go out and subdue everything he had just made. So this is something a little bit stranger. But now all of a sudden, a man is formed from the dust, from the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east. And there he put the Adam, or the human, singular, whom he had formed. Okay. So see what I'm saying? All of a sudden now there seems to be another creation, some kind of other work coming into play here. So by taking this literally, we can see then that Yahuwah must have been standing in the west and looking to the east, okay, in order to put the garden, planted a garden in Eden to the east. So Eden must have been not the Eretz, but something else, another realm perhaps within this realm, within this dimension, a sub realm within this dimension, this, because obviously this was a carbon copy world that he created in Genesis 1. It had to be. Why? Because it said he formed the man out of dust from the ground. So since Adam was formed from the dust of the ground, that means that this carbon copied world existed before Yahuwah created the garden in Eden, which seems to be another realm within this dimension. Because this dimension was called the Eretz, not Eden. So see that? So look, Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east. See that? So Yahuwah must have been in the west facing east. And there he put the Adam, or the human. You know, Adam means human. It means clay or red man, whatever. I guess the context that you're saying it in. But there he put him in the garden in Eden, which was from east where he was standing, because he had to be standing on the Eretz and looking east. And then he put that realm called Eden, which would be a sub-like realm of our dimension. It's carbon copied. Has to be. The man was made of dust. It had to be the carbon copy world, man. It couldn't have been a spiritual world. And out of the ground, Yahuwah Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Well, it seemed that that already happened in Genesis 1, with the tree of life in the midst, or the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then the river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there divided and became 4 riverheads. So, man, well, this is really, really wild, all right? So here he formed a man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils, and he became alive. So he was alive standing on this carbon copied world. And then Yahuwah created another realm within our dimension. It was called Eden. And then he created plants in there. He made every tree grow as pleasant in sight. So he put plants within that garden. There was already plants on the earth, according to Genesis 1. You see where I'm going with this? Okay, so now what happened? I'm going to skip down through the description of the rivers down to 15. It says, and Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. So now, up here where it says there was no man to till the ground, and there was no man to till the ground, now there is. He just put Adam in there. See what I'm saying? So he ain't going backwards, backpedaling back to day 1 in Genesis 1. He started doing something different on day 8 after he rested. It's pretty obvious to me. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. to the east. He was standing on the west, looking east. See that? So then we'll look at back down to 19 once more. And from the ground, Yahuwah, Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the Shemaim and brought them to the man to see what he could call them. So it seems to me that he created other animals that he had not created in those kinds in Genesis 1 and brought them in to be in Eden with Adam. Perhaps these animals talked. But nevertheless, they were put into the garden. They had to have been. Did he round some up that he already had made and marched them over there into the garden and lined them up in the garden for Adam to name them? That's a possibility as well. All right, so this seems to me that mankind came along before Adam did. And so now Adam's here in a different realm in the same dimension. And this dimension is a carbon copy world, man. It's made of carbon. So everything in it must be carbon. At least what he created out of it, out of the dust, and formed it from the dust has to be. So after he did all that, it says, but for the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. And so Yahuwah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place, and the rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into an asha. And he brought her to the man. And the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called Asha, because she was taken from Ash. For this cause a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his Asha, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, and the man and his Asha, yet they were not ashamed." Now, how did Adam know all that? Isn't that peculiar that Adam knew all that right there, that a man would have to leave his father and his mother? How would he know that? Nothing like that's happened yet. And cleave to the Asha, and they shall become one flesh. How would he know that? That they would be considered one. He gave them one name. He called them Adam. Both of them together is Adam. He considers that one, not two. How did Adam know that? And they were naked, and the man in his Asha, yet they were not ashamed. Okay, so they knew nothing about sex, or maybe they knew about sex, but they didn't know anything about perversion, let's just say, or sinful thoughts, wicked thoughts. The thoughts were, they were clean. Okay, so what can we get from this? Let me tell you what we can get from this. And this is going to rock your boat. Now, hang on here now. Grab a hold of your side of your boat and get ready so you don't fall out. Yahuwah, in his omnipotent knowledge and his wisdom, knew that mankind was going to fall. He knew that Adam and Kua would fall. All right. And so he created a place for him to fall to and to live and be there until Yahuwah could make things straight. And so this is why he went through all this that he did, And it's because of the existence of opposition. In order to share his life, the only one that has everlasting life is Yahuwah. And he wanted to share his life, given breath, with other people, other creatures, and he wanted to procreate himself, if you will, in lack of other terms. And so he created this place for Adam and Kua to fall to. So why? What was his intentions for Adam and Kua above mankind? Well, the intentions were that Adam and Kua would be Yesharah, rulers with Yah. And they would be the mediator between him and mankind and beast kind and bird kind and creeping creature kind and all of his other creation. So they would be his priests, his representatives, his priests, his teachers. Though what he would communicate through them to his other creation. So he wanted a group of people to himself to represent him. Why? Because he was invisible. It's just what he wanted to do. Okay, that was his plan. And so, what does that make mankind in Genesis 1? Well, that makes mankind, you ready for it? The Gentiles. So the Gentiles, the Goyim, are mankind. So look, that means there's some type of division here between mankind and Yesharah. So it seems, at least at this point. But once we get studying deeper and deeper and deeper into this, we're going to see that Yahuwah's wisdom is beyond anything we can imagine. And he's going to take his priests and he's going to mingle them into mankind and create one man out of the two. Because that's how much he loves them. That's how powerful his love is. Imagine that. And we're going to get into it. I promise you, we're going to get into it toward the end. So here, if you will, just at least go along with me for right now. Adam and Eve it represents Yesharah, rulers with Yah, priests and kings, mediators between Yahuwah and mankind represents the Gentiles or the nations. Okay. All right. So here right now, then, we have them separated. They're not together. They're not mixed. They're not the same. They're set apart. Okay. Adam and Kua, Yezreel was in Eden, the garden, and inside the Eden. And mankind is in the Eretz, along with all the other kind. All right. So then we come up to Satan, the serpent, the dragon, Satan. He comes into the play. So what's he do? He comes in there and he doesn't go down to mankind. And he's going to say, well, I ain't going to fool with mankind right now. I want to get over there to his chosen. I want to go attack Yezreel, his chosen. And so that's what he does. And he goes into the garden. And I think at this, to me, okay, I'm not real sure if mankind could go into the garden, but I'm pretty sure Adam and Kua could come out of the garden if they wanted to at this particular point. But that's neither here or there. That's just some deep thoughts and thinking you have to do on your own about that. But nevertheless, these animals went in there and Adam named them. And Don't forget, Adam was made of the dust of the eretz, and then he was put into the garden after Yahuwah created the garden. It says it right there in 15. Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work in the garden. So Satan, the serpent, the devil, the dragon, was able to go there regardless. And so he did. And when he went there, what did he do? He decided he was going to corrupt or destroy Yahuwah's creation. He was going to mess it all up. Like a little kid, going into your office and tearing your office apart, right? Emptying all your drawers out and just destroying your office. And you come home and it looks like a disaster, right? That's what he was up to. He wanted to go in there and destroy his creator's creation. And so, unfortunately, sadly, Satan was created perfect until iniquity was found in him. And now he's in here wanting to destroy. So it starts off in chapter 3. It says, and the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field, which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to the Asha, this is speaking of all the other demons, okay, all the other Malachim. He was more craftier than any of them. But, once they fell, decided to revolt or betray Yahuwah, they became like beasts, unreasonable beasts. All right. And so Satan was the most crafty one of all. And so he says to the Asha, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of this garden? And Asha said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree of which is in the midst or the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the Asha, you shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the yom you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. So here was, they were put in a position to make a choice. They either trust and believe Yahuwah and obey Yahuwah, or to trust and believe the dragon and obey the dragon. And unfortunately, they believed the dragon, which means they committed idolatry, which was the first sin. They chose to worship the dragon and follow him. Maybe they feared him. I don't know. But by any rate, they definitely listened to him. And the serpent said to the Asha, you shall certainly not die, for Elohim knows that in the day in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you'll be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. So when they were blind to sin, they were blind to evil and wickedness. They didn't know anything about it. But when they disobeyed, their eyes were opened up to wickedness, and now they could see. So then that's why Scripture says, and now you say that you can, now since you say you can see, you remain in your sin. Your sin remains. See that? And so the big lie here was that they were already like Yahuwah. The disobedience of eating the forbidden fruit wasn't going to make them like Yahuwah, as the dragon suggested. They were already like Yahuwah. And so what did it do? It had the opposite effect. So when they ate it, it made them like the dragon, not like Yahuwah. They were already like Yahuwah. And so they became like the dragon, knowing good and evil. And then they, had to get thrown out and go live it. So, all right, so now that now you're going to go live an evil life. You're going to live among evil, knowledge of evil and wickedness, and so men learned more and more about evil and wicked things. and began practicing them and doing and becoming worse and worse and worse as the generations rolled on. And they began to forget all about Yahuwah. They were more interested in learning about this new world that they were in, that possessed evil and wickedness and all these different things they could do to better their self, get power over others, possessions, things like that. So they committed idolatry and followed the devil. And so what did that do? Well, that made them totally got fired from their job. That's what happened. And then they were sent out into the world like they were supposed to go out and be priests, right, and mediators for Yahuwah to the rest of mankind. But now they went out and they had to live among them, and they had to, and then so them falling, being the heads, okay, of the creation, the kings, if you will, and the high priests and kings and everything, then the subjects had to suffer the same sin or the same punishment as the leaders did. And that's why once they left the garden, everything became evil, was within the knowledge or the realm of knowledge of the knowledge of good and evil. And so therefore now we live it because we chose it. See that? All right. And yes, Yahuwah knew of all this from the beginning. He absolutely did. So it goes on here then to say, she gave it to Adam and he ate it. And then they knew they were naked. They had all these evil thoughts passing through their brain. Whether or not they were grabbing onto them and making them the reality, who knows, but probably not at this infancy, in the fall. But I'm sure the wicked thoughts started passing through their brain, in and out of their brain. Because that happens to us all the time. You just be sitting there, all of a sudden this crazy thought comes through your mind, right? And you just, what do you do with it? Well, it comes in, you let it go out, because it's not part of you. It's just a thought of evil passing through your brain because you're living in the realm of evil. All right. So what happens when people get in trouble is an evil thought come into their mind, and they'll grab it and they'll start dwelling on it and thinking about it. And before you know it, the temptation's too much and they start liking the thought. And then before you know it, they actually go out and commit the thought. And now it becomes them. That thought has become them. Okay. And so that's a big difference. So I don't know, what was going on here, but they knew they were naked. Let's just say it that way. And so then, Yahuwah comes down and calls them out on it, where are you at? And they were afraid because they were naked and everything. So now, he's like, well, who made you know that you're naked? Have you eaten from the tree I command you that you should not eat? And the man said to Asha, so he blames it on Eve or Kua. The Asha whom you gave to me with me, she gave it to me, and I ate it. And then Elohim said to the Asha, what is this you've done? And she said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate it. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock and more than any beast of the field. So he's definitely referring to the creation in Genesis 1 here. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all of your days of your life. And I put enemy between you and the Asha, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. So this is prophecy, speaking of the coming Messiah, which is going to restore the priest line, Yeshriel. Okay, so out of the nations, then, because Adam and Kua gets thrown into the nations. Okay, and they're no longer set apart. They'll get thrown into the nations, right? So out of the nations will come a deliverer, someone who will give them back their rightful authority. See, and they will become the priests and kings for Yahuwah again through this seed that's going to come out of mankind. You see that? That's why there's a big mix happens between the two. The set apart high priests and kings, the mediators with Yahuwah, his representatives, and mankind. So the seed of the beast here, then, or the serpent, would be the anti-Mashiach. This is speaking of the anti. So you have two messiahs. You have the Messiah and the anti-Messiah. Just the word Messiah, anti-Messiah, just the word Messiah, even though it says anti-Messiah, means Messiah-like. So obviously then there's going to be a delusion there. There's going to be the spirit of truth and a spirit of delusion going on. Okay, and then this prophecy will be fulfilled when Yahusha crushes the head of the seed of the serpent, which is the anti-Mashiach. Okay, so I just want to say here at this point, there's a thing called serpent seed doctrine out there. And this is not, you can see why they go there, but this is an overreach. It's an overreach. This is not something that we should grab a hold of and run with for many reasons. I'm not going to get into all that right now. But like I said, there's at least 6 or more different ideologies or theologies about Genesis and what happened in the beginning. And that's one of them, but it's pretty far off. I understand it. I know all about it. The blue bloods, the red bloods, the serpent eyes, the snake eye people and reptile eyeballs and, on and on and on. Our scales, our skin, if you look under a microscope, it looks like snake skin. I don't know. I understand the theory. I've read it and studied it, but I found it to be false. And those of you who believe that way, I will urge you to do more research on your own. And I have no doubt that you will come into agreement after much study that is false. That's a false doctrine. Okay, so here we find out here then Yahuwah lays a curse on them. So the curse here then is to the Asher, he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bringing forth children in pain. And your desires for your husband, and he does rule over you. Okay, so she's going to need her husband to help her get through life's problems now that they're fallen and they're living in the carbon copy world with mankind and all the beasts that exist there. And her children, which he had commanded them to have children before, but now all of a sudden you're going to increase the sorrow in your conception, because her children will be getting hurt, catching diseases, dying, all kinds of stuff. And also, her birth pains, or having the child, birthing the child is going to become very painful. Okay. And so that's what he does for her. And then to the man, he said, Because you have listened to the voice of your Asha and have eaten of the tree, which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it. Curses the ground because of you, and toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. And the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you return. So he put him back over into the dust, the carbon copy world where he formed him from, and he sent him back there. So when you die, you're going to go right back to that dust I formed you out of. Okay, so that proves that the earth was carbon copy before he even created Adam. It wasn't. A lot of people try to teach it was a spiritual realm, of perfection. It was the whole garden. The whole earth was the Garden of Eden. No, it wasn't. If he was made out of dust, it was a carbon copy world. If it's a carbon copy world, that means death exists in that world. Carbon cannot last forever. Flesh cannot last forever on its own. So then it says, quite interestingly here, and the man called his ashes name Kua, because she became the mother of all living. And Yahuwah Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his Asha and dressed them. These are two very interesting statements. And when we get a really closer look at them, it'll make you scratch your head. So I'm going to give you a couple things to think about here. Maybe you've probably never thought about before. The first one, he says, and the man called his ashes name Kua because she became the mother of all living. Remember I told you Adam and Kua was Yezreel. Okay, and they were the line of the living. They would be with him forever. Mankind was part of the carbon copy world, and flesh cannot exist forever. So there was death in that world. But they were placed in a different realm within this dimension. And so they were not going to die. Obviously, they wouldn't. He would not have said, the day you eat of it, you will die, if they didn't die. So they absolutely would not have died if they wouldn't have eaten from that. Okay. And so being the mother of all living, not the dead. And so if we look at that over into our time period, Yahusha says, even though you're still walking in the dust in these fleshly bodies, and you don't believe, even though you're walking around, you're still alive, you're dead. And the ones that have died in Mashiach, even though they're dead in the dust or sleeping in the dust, they're alive. Because he's going to resurrect them back up. So to him, they're still the living. See what I'm saying? So look over here. So the line of the priesthood line, okay, the Adam and Kua was supposed to represent all those that believed and followed their teaching and got to know who Yahuwah was and became part of their family, okay, would have lived forever. So off into our era, those who believe and are delivered and joined to the everlasting covenant, we're the living. And so she's the mother of the living. So her line comes all the way up through till now. And the lines of the Gentiles do not. See what I'm saying? If it comes from mankind, it's not mothers of the living. That's what would be the mothers of the dead. See what I'm saying? Okay, look at Matthew 22. Maybe you'll see it better. Matthew 22. So Matthew 22:32 says, I'll back up to 31 so it makes more sense. And concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by Elohim, saying, I am the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Yishak, and the Elohim of Jacob. Elohim is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the living. See that? Same with Kua here. She's the mother of all living. Those who are in the everlasting covenant and are going to obtain everlasting life. She's the mother of them because she was Yezreel, her and Adam. You picking up what I'm laying down now? She wasn't the mother of mankind, of the dead, but of the living. And then the next sentence is a little bit squirrely too. It says, and Yahuwah Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his Asha and dressed them. And he said, see, the man has become discerning to know good and evil. And now, at least he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. And Elohim sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. So now he's out of that realm. He's throwing them both out of the realm. In our dimension was called Eden, where they could live forever, and been his mediators between him and mankind, and put them over into with mankind in the world of the dead, the walking dead. See that? Now they got to go live with them. And because they were priests and kings over them, they suffered the same fate. Matter of fact, all of creation did. So here where it says, and Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his Asha and dressed them, means that he put them in fleshly bodies. He didn't take and kill one of his creation, his sheep, and throw the bloody skin over top of their backs and let blood drip all over them. I don't believe that at all. I say the blood was in them. So he put, when it says, Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his Asha, he gave them a tent of skin which contained blood. He took away their immortal body of light. I believe Adam and Kua weren't made of flesh and blood. That's why but he did make their original body out of the dust of the ground in the carbon copy world. But when he put them over into the garden, he changed them into immortality. And they had a different body than mankind did. See that? Such as, for an example, like Yahusha had when he was resurrected. That type of body. That's why they couldn't die. And so when they were thrown out, he gave them bodies of flesh, skin and blood, like mankind. And then dressed them. It doesn't really say what he dressed them in, but he made coats of skin for the man and for the Asha, and dressed them in flesh. If they were in a body of light, would they have known they were naked? Probably not. Okay, so very interesting, right? And then he threw him out because if they would have eaten from the tree of life, even though they were now in fleshy skins of flesh and blood, it sounds like if they would have ate from the tree of life, they would have gotten eternal life. Somehow would have been able to transform those fleshly bodies back into bodies of life, and they would have regained immortality. That's what it sounds like. So he'd run them off before they could do that. And so they received these bodies in the Garden of Eden. So they sinned in the Garden of Eden, received the bodies of skin in the Garden of Eden and then were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Isn't that something? Think about that. That's a deep tangent. So anyway, it says, so Yahuwah sent him out of the garden to till the ground from which he was taken. And he drove the man out, and he placed a cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword, which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So here we find out Yahuwah did not destroy the Garden of Eden. It's still there. It's just being guarded. So it's not destroyed. It's still there. Paradise is still there. That realm still exists. Isn't that amazing? So now we know 99%, that there's no place over there called that is the Garden of Eden, that we can physically see it. It's not a literal place that we can lay eyes on and say, oh, there it is, right? But it exists because it said they're guarding the entrance to it. He did not destroy it. So he must have some kind of plans for it if he didn't destroy it. He must have further plans for that place called paradise. And it must be some kind of spiritual realm within our dimension, because we can't see it with our carbon copied eyes. Is it being utilized today? It might be. It just might be. That could be where Enoch is. That could be where Elijah is. Eliyahu. It's a possibility. So then we go into 4, and it says, and Adam knew his Asha. This is after they were thrown out now. So apparently they had no children while they were in the Garden of Eden. Like I said, Hebrew tradition suggests that they were thrown out on the third day. They ate the fruit and were tossed out on the third day after the first week of creation, after the Sabbath. So they wouldn't have had time to have a baby then, would they? No, they didn't. So time went on, and now it says, and Adam knew the Asha, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have gained a man from Yahuwah. So this proves right here, it's undisputable proof. You can't deny this, that Adam knew his Asha, and she conceived and bore Cain, that Adam is the father of Cain, not Satan. Otherwise, don't you think Scripture would say so? And so we wouldn't have to try to dig for it and twist and cherry pick words and verses and try to put something together to prove the serpent seed doctrine. They're very easy right here for Scripture to say, and the devil raped Eve and she bore Cain. If that was true. It don't say anything even close to that. It says, and Adam knew his Asha, which was Kua, and she conceived and bore Cain. So Adam was the father of Cain, not the devil. And again, she gave birth to his brother Abel, and Abel became a keeper of the sheep, but Cain became a tiller of the ground. So they like to say again that they were twins. If they were twins, Adam was both their father, was the father of both of them. Yeah, okay, and if not, it doesn't matter, because even if they weren't twins, Adam was still the father of Cain and Abel, Cain being the firstborn. All right, and so we all know the story of that, so let's skip on down through there a little bit and look at let's go down to about 12. Well, we better back up a little bit more. We better go to 9. So 4:9, Genesis. And Yahuwah said to Cain, where is Abel, your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's guardian? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the Eretz. I want to point this out real quick, that, remember I said he gave them the skin that was flesh and blood skin to cover Adam and Kua, not animal sheep skin, but flesh and blood skin. Well, when she had a baby, the baby come out of her in water and blood. Okay, and so that was a temporary covering for that. Every human that's born, it's a temporary covering until the covering of the Yahusha's blood, the water and blood from Yahusha, when you're reborn from above. You see what I'm saying? So this would be a type or a foreshadow of that every birth, leading up to accepting the blood, the water and the blood, being immersed in water and blood of Yahusha, to be reborn of Yahuwah. See that? And so then obviously the woman bleeds, gets blood on her, and so does the man when he's gets himself cut and whatever else. Okay, and so he bleeds, you bleed blood. See what I'm saying? So, now you are cursed from the Eretz, which opens his mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the Eretz. So see, now they're definitely, you can see they're on the carbon copy world, man. There's death, there's blood, water, vagabond, wandering around, this type of thing. By the way, did you notice that one of the things that Yahuwah told Adam was he would sweat? He'd work from the sweat of his brow. So obviously, the body he had before he received the skin and blood body didn't sweat. Didn't sweat, because why would Yahuwah mention sweat? So that's because the body he had prior to the skin and blood body did not sweat. So that the sweating is a symptom of being in the flesh and blood. You see that? That shows you that they had to be in a different type body in Eden that didn't sweat. It wasn't that the climate was perfect, so they didn't have to, because when he told them they would sweat, that was indication something totally different was going to happen to their body, their new body, that they would sweat now. Okay, so Cain says to Yahuwah, my punishment is too great to bear. See, you have driven me from the face of the ground today. Huh? And I am hidden from your face. Face of what ground? Well, the ground they were living in, the area they were living at that particular time. So instead of saying from our area or from our territory, and just saying ground, okay, there's no big deal there. And I am hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer. He ain't going to be hidden from the face of Yahuwah. Yahuwah is everywhere. So you can see he was in the mind of the flesh. Then he didn't. Remember how when I said, how did Adam know that? When he was saying that you leave the mother and the father and you become one? Because he was in a spiritual body. He was intelligent, man. He was in the mind of the spirit. He was in a different mindset, man. He knew more. But here, Cain, you can obviously see he's in the mind of the flesh. He doesn't understand Yahuwah. And I am hidden from your face? No. Nobody's hidden from the face of Yahuwah. Yahuwah is everywhere, all the time. He never has to leave one place to go to another place. See that? I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the Eretz, and it shall be that anyone who finds me kills me. Who is Cain worried about? Why is Cain so afraid that somebody's going to kill him? Who? Who is going to kill him? There's no way the world was filled with mankind at this particular point. Seth wasn't even born yet. So obviously, Cain is worried about mankind, where they are now living among in the carbon-copied world. And Yahuwah said to him, well, if one kills Cain, vengeance is taken on him sevenfold. How about that? Okay, so who is Yahuwah talking about here? Who is the anyone who Cain is afraid of? And who is Yahuwah talking about? If anyone kills Cain, vengeance is taken on him sevenfold. Must be mankind. And Yahuwah set up a sign for Cain, lest anyone finding him kills him. Who is Yahuwah talking about? Mankind, that's who. I really don't think, even if there were, Adam and Yahuwah did have brothers and sisters through the time that Cain and Abel grew up, which we don't really know what age this all happened at, but more than likely, somewhere between 50 and 100 years old, I would guess, but we really don't know that. So even if there were sons and daughters that Adam and Yahuwah just kept breeding like rabbits and populating the world up, but his brothers and sisters really would want to kill him because he killed Abel. Highly unlikely that you'd want to go kill your brother because he killed another brother of yours. Possible. Well, two wrongs don't make a right, and they obviously would have known that that was a sin, especially if they saw what, Yahuwah, how Yahuwah punished Cain. I don't think they would have wanted anything to do with it. So, that's kind of sketchy to me. But that's part of that doctrine. So Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah and dwelt in the land of Nob, on the east of Eden. So on the east of Eden was the door with the flaming sword. And then I guess east of that was a land called Nob. How did that get named Nob? Well, from mankind, apparently. On the east of Eden. So there must have been some type of forest or sanctuary, something between the east of Eden, from the Garden of Eden to the sea. There must have been some land there called Nob. It was occupied by mankind. And Cain knew his Asha. What Asha? Where'd Cain get his wife from? He grabbed one of his sisters by the hair and drug her with him when he took off? Highly unlikely. And so it said, Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah and dwelt in the land of Nob. It doesn't say he left and took a sister with him or his wife with him. It sounds like he found his wife when he got to the land of Nob. And he dwelt in the land of Nob, and Cain knew his Asha. See that? It doesn't sound like he took her with him because he was a vagabond and a wanderer. But he stumbles into Nob and finds mankind and picks a wife. And Cain knew his Asha, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Not the Enoch that we know, but a different Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So this right here now, if you really consider this, we could get this, okay? If Cain took a sister or granddaughter of Adam and Eve, or some girl. And two there with him, and they settled in this little area called Nob that they could have built a house for themselves, or some type of dwelling place to live in, for shelter, both shelter, between the two of them. Maybe a barn or two or whatever. But a whole city? And so, first of all, why would there be a need to build a whole city if there was just Cain, his Asha, and his baby, Enoch? Why would he go nuts and build an entire city? And how long would it take him to build that entire city? A very long time. Just one man? Makes no sense. And so he builds this city, and he names it after his son, Enoch. So apparently there was a lot of people there, a lot of mankind there, and he built that city, and he enlisted these other mankind, these other people, and they helped him build this big city to live in. Ain't no one man going to build a city. You can build a house maybe or two, but he ain't going to build a whole city by himself, man. That's not even, nobody should be thinking that one man can do that. Take you 1,000 years. Probably, I hate to see what it looked like. Trying to do it all yourself. It'd be almost impossible. Don't forget, he didn't have the tools we got now either. So you got to go back to the primitive ways of building. And then could one man build primitively with primitive methods and tools? No. And to Enoch was born Irad, and it goes on down through here. And then it comes to Lamech. He took 2 wives. And then where did he get all them? Where'd they come from? They go back over there on the other side of Eden where Adam and Kua was, and grab some of the sisters and bring them back. No doubt it. So they must have been there. And he was the father of those who dwelled in tents with livestock. And his brother's name was Yabal. And his father of all those who play with the lyre and the flute. And so they were magicians, created musical instruments. And she bore Tubal, Cain, a smith of all kinds of tools in bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, listen to my words, for I have killed a young man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. For Cain is avenged 7-fold, and Lamech 77-fold. So there you go. The line of Cain is continuing to murder. So Adam knew his Asha again, and she bore a son and called his name Sheth. So now Sheth comes in after all this. For Elohim has appointed me another seed instead of Abel, because Cain has slain him. And to Sheth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. Then he began to call on the name of Yahuwah. So Sheth began to call on the name of Yahuwah after his boy was born, Enosh. Okay, so you see a tremendous amount of things happened and before Sheth came in. And says Sheth replaced Abel, then would Adam and Kua have had hundreds of sons and daughters, but none of them was able to replace Abel until now? Doesn't make any sense at all, does it? So I don't think he had any sons and daughters up to this point. I just think Cain was multiplying with mankind at this point. See that? Then it goes into the book of genealogy of Adam. In the yom that Elohim created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and called their name Adam. In the yom, they were created. So the male and female married together would be called Adam because they would be one. And Adam lived 130 years and brought forth a son in his own likeness after his image and called his name Sheth. So Adam was 130 years old out of the Garden of Eden for 130 years before Sheth was born. If he'd have had a bunch of sons and daughters in between Abel and Sheth, wouldn't one of them took the place of Abel rather than wait until Sheth? It don't make sense, does it? Because Kua even said that Sheth replaced Abel because Cain killed Abel. So he was the direct replacement, which he must have been the next born son of hers. And after he brought forth Sheath, the Yamam of Adam was 800 years, and he brought forth sons and daughters. So after he brought forth Sheath, he had 800 more years. So he was 130 when Sheath was born. So Adam died at 930 years. And he did bring forth sons and daughters, but after Sheath. See, man? So from the time Sheath was born to 800 years later to 930 years, and he died, between that time period, he did have other sons and daughters. But Cain had already found his wife way before that. Way before that, even before Sheath was born. He had found Enasha, and he built a city. See what I'm saying? So there it is. There's the Gentiles, mankind, that Cain mingled among them. That's who he was afraid of, and that's who Yahuwah was talking about. So that's your Gentiles, and Adam, Kua, and now Sheath. So Cain became a Gentile. He was cut off, thrown out from his people, and became a Gentile. His lineage lived on. It's written right here in chapter 4. He did breed and continued to have children and make a city. But he was cut off from Israel. And so Sheath came along and continued Israel's line. Adam, Kua, Sheath, so forth and so on. Okay? We understand everybody's picking up where I'm laying down at this point. Okay. So then what happens? Well, it goes on down through, more and more people are being born in both lineages, in the Israel and in mankind and the Gentiles. More and more people are being born, and the world's beginning to populate more and more and more. Okay. So that brings us on down into Noah. Well, actually, Enoch in 524 says, and Enoch walked with Elohim, then he was no more, for Elohim took him. That's the Enoch we know, not Cain's son, but this Enoch is from the line of Sheath, not Cain. See that? Two different lines there. All right. So then, of course, through that same line comes Noah. So Noah is born during a time where wickedness is running rampant. All evil thoughts, men are only thinking about evil thoughts. The whole face of the earth. It says, and it came to be when men began to increase on the face of the Eretz, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men, that they were good, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Okay, so this is speaking of the fallen Malachim now, and they came down and they breeded with women, and they created a little race that were known as mighty men, who were of old, the men of name. Okay, or they were just different creatures. Their DNA was totally different. It had been altered, we'll say. So one thing I want to point out here, because I don't spend a whole lot of time on this, but on 6:4 it says, the Nephilim were on the Eretz and those Yamim. And also afterward, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. Okay, so where here it says that it came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. They had children, and they even married them, okay? The Nephilim were on the Eretz and those Yamim, and then afterwards. So in that day before the flood, but then after the flood? How? Because all living creatures that breathed were destroyed in the flood, except for those who were in the ark. Right? 8 people in the ark. That's it. Well, then obviously it wasn't Noah, because it says, this is the genealogy of Noah. That Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahuwah. Okay, let me see. And it said, let me go back up here a little bit. And Yahuwah saw that the wickedness of the man was great on the Eretz, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And Yahuwah was sorry that he had made man on the Eretz. See, made man on the Eretz. And he was grieved in his heart. And Yahuwah said, I am going to wipe off man whom I have created from the face of the Eretz, both man and beast, put mankind along with beast kind. Okay. Creeping creatures and birds of the Shemayim, for I am sorry that I have made them, the bird kind, the creeping creature kind. What he did in Genesis 1, he's sorry he did that. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahuwah. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generations, meaning all the way from Adam and Eve through the Israel line, the priest line, the mediators, the rulers with Yah line. He was clean all the way through until he was born. So in other words, he didn't have any of mankind in him. He didn't have any of the altered DNA. The Malachim came down and had children with the women of mankind. None of that blood was in his line either. He who had perfect genealogy from Adam and Kuah to him. So that his DNA was not corrupt, and he had not bred outside of the priestly line. He had not breeded with mankind. None of his family did, all the way up to him. So he was perfect in them generations. Okay. And Noah walked with Elohim. And Noah brought forth 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the Eretz was corrupt before Elohim. And the Eretz was filled with violence. So Yahuwah says, well, Adam and Kuah's line, the priestly line, Israel has not been destroyed or corrupted. So you know what? I'm not going to destroy that priestly line, because in other words, he wasn't disappointed or sad that he created them, although they fell, but he was disappointed in mankind, and beast kind and creeping, crawling kind, all the things that was going on in that carbon copy world just went haywire. And it wasn't not the fallen demons, Malachim sure had their hands in the pot and stirring the pot, right? So he decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and keep Noah, save Noah, and destroy everybody else. And Noah's wife, which must have been perfect in her generations as well, she must have come from that same line Noah did. And by that time, there was a lot of them. So there'll be like 4th and 5th and 6th, 10th cousin or whatever could still be in that line. See what I'm saying? So Noah and his wife, they were good to go. They were perfect in their generations. So therefore, their 3 sons would be also. So Shem, Ham, and Japheth would also be good to go. But how about those wives of the three sons? It doesn't really say. But obviously, I don't think they were, because after the flood, the giants, the Nephilim, that line stayed in existence. And you might say, what are you talking about, Brother Mark? All the giants were killed in the flood. Well, yeah, well, where did Goliath come from and his three sons that were killed by King David? That must have come through a recessive gene of sorts, through one of the wives of one of the three sons of Noah. That's why the giants was afterwards. It said, and afterwards. See, we know that the giants existed after the flood because David killed them. He killed all the giants, Goliath and his sons. He killed them. So they did exist afterwards, after the flood. So this is interesting that, these three sons of Noah after the flood. Now what happens? Everybody's wiped out. Okay? Everybody gone. Any type of mankind, any mix between races, between mankind and priestly line, anything with the Malachim, mating with the women, all wiped out. All the beasts, everything that breathe air, it gone. He says even the birds. So to me, the only thing that remained was the fish, stuff that breathed water. Some of the fish had to survive it. It doesn't really mention that, but we know everything that breathed air, oxygen, died. So now what? So now we have 8 people. All right, so what is this? Well, this is he delivered through water the priestly line. Okay? And through this priestly line would involve into Yahuwah choosing Adam and Kua line back out of it, okay? And the rest of them would forget about Yahuwah and not know Yahuwah, and they would be gone back into being mankind again. They would be Gentiles again. And so through these 3 sons of Noah, we're going to get another group of Gentiles and a remnant, smaller group that's true to Yahuwah and to the line of Adam and Kua and Sheth. And so there's going to be 2 again. Crazy, ain't it? And so the mankind and the priestly line, 8 survivors, and out of them it goes right back to the same old. Mankind and the priestly line, the Gentiles, and who mankind is. All right. So, and then what's amazing about this is through this priestly line, or these 3 sons, we know that through the line of Shem comes the deliverer. So that through Shem is the priestly line, continues on, right? And then through Ham and Japheth are the Gentiles. Why do we know that? Because through Shem comes Yahusha. That's why. The promise. Okay. That's going to come and set everything straight, put everything back straight again. All right. It's all crazy, right? But does that mean Yahuwah is going to forget about these other 2 lines? Totally. These Gentiles? No, not really. But one thing that's interesting is through the line of Shem, through that priestly line, I believe he tells us that through that line, he's going to deliver 1/3 of those people coming through that line, and 2/3 will be destroyed with the disobedient. And I think we find that in Zechariah 13:8 and 9. So if we want to go to that real quick, be Zechariah. So Zechariah 13:8 and 9. Probably go back up to 7. Let's go up to 7. Read down through 9. O sword, awake against my shepherd, against the man who is my companion, declares Yahuwah Zaboeth. Smite the shepherd and let the sheep be scattered. But I shall turn my hand upon the little ones. And it shall be throughout all the soil, that's us, throughout all the people, we're made of soil, declares Yahuwah, that 2/3 therein are cut off and die, and 1/3 is left therein. And I shall bring this third into fire and refine them as silver is refined, and try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I shall answer them. I shall say, this is my people, while they say, Yahuwah is my Elohim. So here I believe this is the dividing of the priestly line. He's going to destroy 2/3 of it, but deliver 1/3 to be his people, to continue on with his plan of having a mediator between him and mankind, him and the Gentiles that he created on creation day 6. Okay. This would be his chosen. Is he going to bring other Gentiles into this, or is this a direct line of Shem? No, they're going to be coming from everywhere. They're mixed all through the Gentiles right now. It's a mess now. It got worse. It's a big mess. So through that, even the Gentiles, he's going to be getting 1/3 of those people out of there to make up that count of 1/3. See what I'm saying? So in the end, then they will be Yisrael, like Adam and Kua was, and then they'll assume the role of teaching and caring for and feeding the mankind in the eternal reign. The only difference is mankind's going to be immortal. They're going to achieve immortality also. Why? Because they're Ephraim. Mankind's Ephraim. Ephraim's the Gentiles. And Ephraim's his firstborn. Firstborn, yeah, he created them first, mankind, in Genesis chapter 1. That's who he created first. He didn't create Adam and Kua, the priestly line, until the 8th day, if you will, or the first day of the second week. That's why Ephraim's the firstborn. Mankind's the firstborn. So you created them first. We'll get into that a little bit deeper here in a minute. Okay, so let's go back here, and that's why I'll make sure I don't get off on a tangent on you. Yeah, let's look at Genesis 6, 1 through 8. It says, and it came to be when men became to increase on the erects. Oh, I already read all that. Sorry about that. So let's go to now, let me see. Okay. I thought there was something else here I wanted to share, but I guess not. So let's just go on let's move on to Genesis 9. So Genesis 9:1 says, Elohim blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, bear fruit and increase to fill the earths. So he wanted them to go ahead and start procreating and, move out from there and start filling the earth back up with mankind. At this point, they're all one. See what I'm saying? There's no two anymore. They're one. But once they start procreating and spreading out, and then they start sending for wives and this and that, then they separate again and they become two again. They divide again and then become the priestly line and mankind again. See what I'm saying? But at first, they're the same. They're the priestly line that was delivered through water by Yahusha. See that? All right. And so look over now at Genesis 10, and it explains that to you. So it goes on here. It says, I don't want to read the whole thing, but it says that, and this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth, it goes on, Gomer, Magog. So you can recognize the Gentile names out of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Ewan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus. You see that? And then the sons of Omer. These are all pagan countries. These are all Gentile countries, the nations. You can recognize a lot of them when you read down through there. And then when you get to 6, it says, and the sons of Ham is Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, Canaan, same thing. So then you, in the firstborn of Ham, Cush, the sons of Cush is Sheba, Sabta, Rama, Sabtaka, Sheba, Dinan. And so you can see and recognize the Gentile nations coming out of Japheth and coming out of Gomer and out of Ham and out of Cush. You see that? And so look at this in 8. And Cush brought forth Nimrod. There's the big troublemaker coming on the scene right there. So this is definitely part of the Gentiles now. So now we've went from 9:1, which they were the priestly line that was delivered by water by Yahuwah, okay, to expanding out and breeding and becoming the nations again, becoming mankind, Gentiles. You see that? And the big troublemaker just came on the scene, Nimrod. Now Noah's still alive. He hasn't died yet. So Cush brought forth Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the Eretz, and he was a mighty hunter before Yahuwah. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahuwah. And we all know all about Nimrod. So he tried to build the Tower of Babel. He got it partially finished, and Yahuwah went down and struck them and changed their language. And they were all dumbfounded because they couldn't communicate, so therefore they couldn't continue to construct the Tower of Babel. And so it was an unfinished project, but his whole goal was to build it up to the clouds, and he thought he could get up there and take a bow and arrow and shoot the arrow up into the heart of Yahuwah and kill him, and then inherit all Yahuwah's powers because he destroyed him. So anyway, that goes on and on and on and on. The Canaanites, Zidon, Azza, all of them, Sodom, Amorah, all the Gentile nations coming from Ham and Japheth. Okay, so what's that? That's 2/3. 1/3 would be who? Shem. You see what I'm saying now? Okay, so then if you jump over to 30 or 20, what is it, 22. Genesis 10:22, it says the sons of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Lud and Aram, the sons of Aram, Utz, Kul, Gether, and Mash. Two sons are named. One was Peleg, and the earth was divided. Yamam, the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Yoktan. And Yoktan brought forth Alamadad, and on and on and on and on here. Sheba, Orpher, Hula, Yobab, and all these were sons of Yoktan, and their dwelling place was from Mesha as you go toward Safar, a mountain of the east. These were the sons of Shem, according to their clans, according to their languages, in their lands, according to their nations. So these were the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their generations in their nations. See, now we're back to nations again, or mankind, Gentiles. And from these, the nations were divided on the Eretz after the flood. So they created nations again. Mankind spread out, has consumed the earth again, taken over. Okay, and so, they built the Tower of Babel and all of that, and they're one, okay? As a nations, they're speaking the same language, and they're all, instead of spreading out like you had told them to, they're congregating, trying to make a city and a big tower and all this stuff, right? And so he stops all that, and Yahuwah scattered them from there over the face of the Eretz, and they left off building the city. See, it's unfinished. That is why its name was called Babel, because there Yahuwah confused the language and all the Eretz, and from there Yahuwah scattered them over all the face of all the Eretz. So there you go. Ephraim, mankind, Gentiles, that's who the Gentiles are. See, this is after the flood now. Okay, and now we know that they have duplicated the Tower of Babel, the undone tower in Brussels, Belgium. And the tower sits there as a monument to the Tower of Babel and to Nimrod, and it's now the headquarters of the European Union over in Brussels, Belgium. You can see it now. It's built, and they've been using it for quite a while. So then it goes into in Genesis 11:10, into the genealogy of Shem, and after the flood, and it goes on and on and on, and down to Eber, and Eber brought Shilach. Shilach lived 30 years and brought forth Eber, which would be in the line of the Hebrew-speaking people, the language of Hebrew. And so their language, to continue the language, it seems the language of Shem was not messed up. It was left alone, and they continued to speak Hebrew, the original language that they all spoke before Yahuwah changed their languages and confused their languages. The line of Shem seems to have kept that language. And so it comes down to Eber, who would be the Hebrew language came from him, and therefore they would call them Hebrew because they spoke Hebrew. It's like, you speak English, they call you an Englishman. You see what I'm saying? It's not really a country. England is, but English is not. It's just the language. And so if you speak English, they call you an Englishman. Same thing here. He spoke Hebrew, so he's called Eber. So anyways, Eber went ahead and takes over from him, starts going on down through the genealogy until it comes up to, lo and behold, verse 26, Terach lived 70 years and brought forth Abram. And there we go. So there's Abram coming from the line of Shem. So we know from there we have Abram, we have Yitzhak, we have Jacob, and then we have the 12 tribes making up Israel, and then one of the sons of Joseph becoming Ephraim, being blessed to be the father of nations. Okay, of nations. Manasseh being a nation, but Ephraim being greater than him because he will be of the nations or the Gentiles. So who's the Gentiles then? Ephraim. Ephraim goes out into the Gentiles, into the seeds of Ham and Japheth. Why? To go back in there to mix with them so that the nations all become Ephraim, the firstborn mankind of Yahuwah, whom he loves. And then he can deliver them. This is an amazing thing Yahuwah did here. People seem to think there's this big, huge division between who the Gentiles are and who Israel is, or Yahuwah is, and this really is not. Ephraim is Israel. It is Ephraim. He is the firstborn. He's mankind. He's the Gentiles. It's crazy, isn't it? Okay, so anyway, jumping a little bit ahead on you there. So let's back up here. And let's get a look at 12, Genesis 12, 1 through 9. It says, and Yahuwah said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the Eretz shall be blessed. See that? Why? Because he's going to send his seed, Ephraim, off the line of Jacob, out into the nations to mix with the nations, so that they also become Yisrael, rulers with Yah. Ooh, the secrets and the power of Yahuwah, the depths of Yahuwah, unbelievable. Y'all picking up what this is laying down. It's going to clear up a little bit here. We ain't done yet. Hang in there. So Abram left, and as Yahuwah had commanded him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he set out for Charan. And Abram took Sarah, his wife, and Lot and his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the beings whom they had acquired in Charan, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they came to the land of Canaan. And Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh. And at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I give this land. And he built there an altar to Yahuwah, who had appeared to him. And from there he moved to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent in Bethel on the west and on the east. And he built there an altar to Yahuwah and called on the name of Yahuwah. And Abram set out, continuing toward the south. So here we go. Abram coming out of Babel with his father dying in Charan, and then he'd taken Lot and his Sarah, his sister, his wife now, and heading south. And Yahuwah's promising to give that land to him, directly to him, which would be the promised land, or also we can see this as Eden, because it's the dwelling place of the priestly line. See that? And that priestly line is now going to come through Abram, Yitzhak, and Jacob. That's the promised land. Okay, everybody sticking with me on this, I hope. So now let's look at Genesis 15, 18, 20. It says, on the same Yom, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given this land to your seed, from the rivers Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Euphrates, with the Quenites and the Quinzite and the Quadmanite and the Kedite and the Pezite and the Rephaim and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Girgashite and the Yebusi. So there's that promised land description. That promised land is pretty large. It goes from the river of Egypt, the great river in Egypt, the Nile, clear over to the Euphrates River. Okay. So that is now Eden, the promised land. So Genesis 21, 12, 13 says, but Elohim said to Abraham, notice his name's been changed now, and now he's the father of the nations, said to Abraham, let it not be evil in your eyes because of the boy and because of your female servant. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Yitzchak your seed is called. And of the son of the female servant I also make a nation, because he is your seed. And Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, which he gave to Hagar, put it on her shoulder, also the boy, and sent her away. And she left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. So it became the Ishmaelites, which would be like kind of like the Saudi Arabians, and even off into Egypt. There, even became another nation. So, in 32, Genesis 32, 22 to 32, we read, and he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford of Jacob. And he took them and sent them over the stream and set over what he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of Yom. And when he saw that he did not overcome him, he touched the socket of his hip. And the sockets of Jacob's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the Yom breaks. But he said, I am not letting you go until you have blessed me. So he asked him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name is no longer called Jacob, but Yisrael, because you have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome. And Jacob asked him, saying, please let me know your name. And he said, why do you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. For I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life is preserved. And the sun rose on him as he passed over Peniel, and he limped on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of the thigh of Jacob in the sinew of the hip. So here we find out now that the direct line for the priestly line now, which was destroyed with the flood, right, which belonged to Adam and Kua originally in their line, has become the line through Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob. And he has become Yesharau, which is the priestly line. These are the chosen people of Yahuwah, just like Adam and Kua and Sheth were. So now Yahuwah has reestablished his line, his priestly line. It's going to be kings and priests and rulers with him, mediator, if you will, between him and mankind, or the nations. The nations are not going to cease to exist. The nations will be in the eternal reign. They're going to be in the millennium reign and the eternal reign. In the eternal reign, it's going to go back to the way he intended to be when he created it all. It's going to go back into being how it should be in the beginning, in the first place. You're going to have your priestly line and mankind, the nations. Look at Genesis 48:11. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, but see, Elohim has also shown me your seed. So Jacob is talking to his son Joseph. Okay, and this is where the Gentiles are going to come from. He's going to mix his seed with the mankind, and so that they all become Ephraim and they become Yisrael. Wow. Man, whew. That's amazing. Just think about that. And so Joseph brought them from between his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the arets. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right hand, which was Jacob, right? And brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, consciously directing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, the Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Yitzchak walked, the Elohim who has fed me all my life long to this day, the messenger who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the youths, and let my name be called upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Yitzchak, which would be Yisrael. And let them increase to a multitude in the midst of the Arets. And that's where they're at. They're in the Middle East. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it was evil to his eyes. And he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from the head of Ephraim to the head of Manasseh. And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also becomes a people, and he also is great. And yet his younger brother is greater than he. And his seed is to become the completeness of the nations. Wow. Completeness of the nations, the multitude of the nations, if you will. So Ephraim is the nations, the Gentiles, mankind. Wow. How did that seed carry over? Through the wives of the three sons of Noah. Because they came from the seed of mankind. And one of them had a recessive gene, which came the giants, Goliath and his sons, that David killed. That's how we know that they were part of mankind and not the priestly line of Adam and Noah. That's how we know that. And he blessed them on that Yom, saying, and you, Yisrael, shall bless, saying, Elohim make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. And Yisrael said to Joseph, see, I am dying, but Elohim shall be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. And I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. And so through those two sons, Joseph doubled in size, increased. So his territory increased through those two sons. Joseph increased. All right. Powerful stuff, man. All right, let's continue on. Exodus 19. 5 and 6 says, "And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, and for all the Eretz is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set apart nation." So there it is. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Yisrael. So there is, man, Yahuwah is spilling the beans. He's letting them know what's going on here. Okay. And so now this is they're through the line of Adam and Kua, who's and Adam and Kua and their descendants, their seed, if you will, was supposed to be the priest and set apart nation, aligned with Yahuwah, ruling with Yahuwah above all the others, and were to be the mediator between Yahuwah and the others of mankind. See that? He created a priestly lineage for himself through Adam and Kua. That's why he created him, picked him up, and dropped him in. After he created Eden, dropped him in there. They were supposed to be the priestly line, but they'd failed. They'd failed after 3 days. So here Yahuwah is letting the cat out of the bag. He's saying, now, I'm starting over with this line. You guys are going to be the priest for me. You're going to be the priest, and you're going to be my treasured possession, and you're going to reign as priest, and you're going to be set apart from the rest of mankind with me, and you're going to rule with me over mankind. Okay, who is also supposed to rule over the rest, subdue it, right? And so this doesn't work out, jumping ahead here, okay? And so his whole plan is to do it himself. He knows there's no man as an intercessor. No man can do it, and now he's going to have to do it. He's going to have to be the high priest. He's going to have to be set apart and rule over the people through his right arm, which is Yahusha. But in his wisdom, he brings in the priestly line and builds it up into an assembly, into a body, with him being the head, Yahusha being the head. And then there's the high priest line that's going to rule over the Gentiles or mankind, his other creation for eternity. And so that line, that his plan will come into play. It'll happen just the way he planned it to happen. This is amazing, man. This is mind-blowing stuff. But and that way, all of Israel will be delivered in that way. Wow. Okay, so let's move on here. Okay, don't want to go there. All right, so now we're going to move over into Isaiah. All right, so Isaiah, hopefully this is starting to make some sense to you all now. You're starting to see it. This is what his plan was in the beginning. He's going to make it come true in the end. He's going to achieve what he set out to do. He's going to make things straight. So Isaiah 42, 5-8. Thus said the All, Yahuwah, who created the Shemayim and stretched them out, who spread forth the Eretz and that which comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it, and spirit to those who walk on it. I, Yahuwah, have called you in righteousness, and I take hold of your hand and guard you, and give you for a covenant to a people, for a light to the Gentiles. There it is, to mankind. See that? See his plan now? to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, those who sit in darkness from the prison house. I am Yahuwah, that is my name, and my esteem I do not give to another, nor my praise to idols. Now listen to this in 9. See, the former predictions have come, and new ones I am declaring. Before they spring forth, I let you hear them. Whew. That's wild. Sing to Yahuwah a new song, his praise from the ends of the Eretz. You who go down to the sea and all that is in it, you coastlines and you inhabitants of them. Wow. There Yahuwah telling you what's going on in them verses right there. Look at Isaiah 49, 5 and 6. And now said Yahuwah, who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Yaakov back to him. Though Yesharal is not gathered to him, yet I am esteemed in the eyes of Yahuwah, and my Elohim has been my strength. And he says, shall it be a small matter for you to be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to bring back the preserved ones of Yesharal? And I shall give you as a light to the Gentiles, to be my deliverance to the ends of the Eretz. Wow. Light to the Gentiles. See, the priestly line is supposed to enlighten the Gentiles, the mankind, so that they come and worship Yahuwah and know Yahuwah. Don't forget who mankind is. It's Ephraim. Gentiles are Ephraim. Ephraim's mankind. The firstborn. Genesis 1. On the 6th day. So Isaiah 60, if you will. Isaiah 60, 11 and 12 says, and your gates shall be open continually. They are not shut yom or night, to bring to you the wealth of the Gentiles and their sovereigns in possession. For the nation and the reign that do not serve you shall perish, and those Gentiles shall be utterly laid waste. 2/3 gone. 1/3 refined. All right. Now we're going to get a little long here on this one. Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31 says, at that time declares Yahuwah, I shall be the Elohim of all the clans of Yesharal, and they shall be my people. Thus said Yahuwah, a people escaped from the sword found favor in the wilderness, Yesharal, when it went to find rest. Yahuwah appeared to me from afar, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I shall draw you with kindness. I am going to build you again, and you shall be rebuilt, O maiden of Yesharal. Again, you shall take up your tambourine and go forth in the dances of those who rejoice. Again, you shall plant vines on the mountains of Samaria. The planter shall plant and treat them as common. For there shall be a day when the Netzarim cry on Mount Ephraim, arise and let us go up to Zion, to Yahuwah, our Elohim. Okay, so Netzarim are the branches of Yahusha, but what's Mount Ephraim? Is there such place in Israel or anywhere else? No. So what is it? It's just a type. It's what you would call a figure of speech, or maybe a metaphor of the nations. So basically, what we could be saying here is, "For there shall be a yom," paraphrasing now, "for there shall be a yom when the Nazarene cry in the nations." So we could say that. "Arise and let us go to Zion, to Yahuwah Elohim." See that? So Ephraim is the Gentiles, or is mankind. "For thus said Yahuwah, sing with gladness to Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Cry out, give praise, and say, O Yahuwah, deliver your people, the remnant of Yesharah. See, I am bringing them from the land of the north, and shall gather them from the ends of the Eretz." See that? That proves right there. Ephraim is the nations. "Among them, the blind and the lame, those with child and those in labor, together a great assembly returning here. With weeping they shall come, and with their prayers I bring them. I shall make them walk by rivers of Mayim in a straight way in which they do not stumble. For I shall be a father to Yisrael and Ephraim. He is my firstborn." See that? So Ephraim is his firstborn. So who is Ephraim? Mankind. The nations that were created, mankind was created back in Genesis 1:26, because they're the firstborn. Not the priestly line, it came afterwards. So Yehuda would be the secondborn. Ephraim is the firstborn, not the priestly line, because they were the mankind in Genesis 1:26. See that? That's why they became the nations when Israel crossed hands and blessed Ephraim, because he would be sent out into the nations, populate throughout the entire earth. "Hear the word of Yahuwah, O Gentiles." So look at that. "O Gentiles," speaking of Ephraim, "and declare it in this isles far off in all the world, and say, he who scattered Israel gathers him, and shall guard him as a shepherd his flock. For Yahuwah shall ransom Jacob and redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. And they shall come in and shall sing in the height of Zion, and stream to the goodness of Yahuwah for gain, and for new wine, and for oil, and for the young of the flock in the herd. And their being shall be like a well-watered garden, and never languish again." Have the Ruach HaKodesh, the living waters, the priestly line. "Then shall a maiden rejoice in a dance, and young men and old together, and I shall turn their mourning to joy, and shall comfort them, and shall make them rejoice from their sorrow, and shall fill the being of the priest with fatness, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, says Yahuwah. Thus said Yahuwah, a voice was heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children, because they are no more. Thus said Yahuwah, hold back your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your work, declares Yahuwah, and they shall return from the land of the enemy. And there is expectancy for your latter end, declares Yahuwah, and your children shall return to their own country. I have clearly heard Ephraim laminating. You have chastened me, and I was chastened, like an untrained calf. Turn me back, and I shall turn back, for you are Yahuwah, my Elohim. For after my turning back, I repented, and after I was instructed, I struck myself on the thigh. I was ashamed, even humiliated, for I bore the reproach of my youth. Is Ephraim a precious son to me, a child of delights? For though I spoke against him, I still remember him. That is why my affections were deeply moved for him. I have great compassion for him, declares Yahuwah. Set up the signposts, make landmarks, set your heart toward the highway, the way in which you went. Turn back, O maiden of Israel, turn back to these cities of yours. Till when would you turn here and there, O backsliding daughter? For Yahuwah has created what is new on Eretz, and Asha encompasses a man. Thus said Yahuwah of Zaboeth, the Elohim of Israel, let them once again say this word in the land of Yehudah and in its cities, when I turn back their captivity. Yahuwah bless you, O home of righteousness, mountain of set apartness. And in Yehudah and all its cities, farmers and those who journey with flocks shall dwell together. For I shall fill the weary being, and I shall replenish every grieved being. At this I awoke and looked around, and my sleep was sweet to me. See, the days are coming, says Yahuwah, that I shall sow the house of Yisrael and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man. See that? The seed of man? Yeah, the seed of mankind. See, he just exposed it. And the seed of beasts, the seed of a beast. And it shall be that as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to throw down and to destroy and to afflict, so I shall watch over them to build and to plant, declares Yahuwah. And that's so powerful right there. Did y'all catch it? See, the Yamim are coming, says Yahuwah, that I shall sow the house of Yisrael and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and the seed of beast. Wow. There it is, man. With mankind. And that's what he did when he scattered Ephraim and Yehudah, really, out into the world. All right. And to interbreed with the seed of mankind so that the line of the priest would be found in them. And so therefore they could be delivered. And his plan would be come back into play. This is that's what he was planning to do all along. Okay, he didn't make mankind so he could destroy mankind. He created mankind to give a job to the priestly line, to bring them to him, and so they could come into and be mishpacha. They could all be one. You know, one man. Make one man out of the two. That's what he's up to. That's what he wants to do, and that's what he's doing. He's going to do it. He's going to accomplish what he set out to do. You're going to make everything straight, man. Okay, so let's look at 31. See, the days are coming, says Yahuwah, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah. Now, like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them out by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahuwah. Okay, so they're supposed to be rulers with him in a relationship with him, much like a bride and a husband, like a marriage, make them one. Just like, the male and the female, Adam and Kua, he called them Adam. He called them both Adam because there was no separation as far as he was concerned. The two became one, right? So out of the two men, he's going to make one. So out of the Gentiles or mankind and the priestly line, he's going to make one man. That's his plan. Don't ask me, ask Yahuwah. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Yisrael after those days, declares Yahuwah. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. There's the renewed covenant for anyone, everybody that believes in Yahuwah, Yahusha, and his blood sacrifice, the power of his blood, and the sacrifice of the Lamb of Yahuwah can be the seed of Abraham. Join the everlasting covenant and go into the renewed covenant through your belief. Okay, so go to Jeremiah 33. I think that was pretty clear in what Yahuwah was saying there. Then it actually opens it up a little bit more, so you can understand it just a little bit more. So look at Jeremiah 33 now. Jeremiah 33:17 says, let me see, through the end of the chapter. For thus said Yahuwah, for Daud there is not to cease a man to sit on the throne of the house of Yesharel. Okay, so this would be Yahusha. And for the priests, the Levites, there is not to cease a man to offer burnt offerings before me, to kindle grain offerings, and to slaughter continually. There will be priests through the line of the Levites in the body, and they will be doing these things. Thus said Yahuwah, and the word of Yahuwah came to Yirmiyahu, saying, Thus said Yahuwah, if you could break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there be not yom and night in the season, then my covenant could also be broken with David, my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my attendants, as the host of the Shemaim is not counted, nor the sand of the sea measured, so I increase the descendants of Daud, my servant, and the Levites who attend upon me. And the word of Yahuwah came to Yirmiyahu, saying, Have you not observed what these people have spoken, saying, the two clans which Yahuwah has chosen have been rejected by him? So they have despised my people, no more to be a nation before them. Thus said Yahuwah, if my covenant is not with yom and night, and if I have not appointed the laws of the Shemaim and the Eretz, then I would also reject the descendants of Jacob and Daud, my servant, so that I should not take of his descendants to be rulers over the descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. For I shall turn back their captivity and have compassion on them. See that? Wow. So that's why he's sending the seed out to mingle with mankind in order to bring them back. And so all that Israel will be delivered and Yahuwah's promises will be fulfilled. We all seeing that. Boy, Yahuwah is something else, man. So Ezekiel 36, 20 to 38 reveals a lot, a whole lot. Now listen up closely to this one. And when they came to the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my Kadesh name. For it was said of them, these are the people of Yahuwah, and yet they have gone out of his land. It's talking about Israel being scattered. But I have compassion on my set-apart name, which the house of Yesharel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore say to the house of Yesharel, thus said the Master Yahuwah, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Yesharel, but for my set-apart name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. Ain't that funny? They did the opposite what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to esteem his name among the nations, right? Instead, they profaned his name among the nations. Humanity, something else. And I shall set apart my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst. And the nations shall know that I am Yahuwah, declares the Master Yahuwah, when I am set apart in you before their eyes. And I shall take you from among the nations And I shall gather you out of all the lands, and I shall bring you into your own land, Eden, the promised land, right? And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols I cleanse you. And I shall give you a new heart and put a new ruach within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh, and put my ruach within you. And I shall cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and shall do them. And you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I shall be your Elohim. So he's going to pull them out. He's bringing them back, and he's going to make them fulfill his will of them being his priests to all the nations. He's going to write the laws in their heart, in their fleshly heart, and he's going to put it in there. Powerful stuff, man. So then we have the two-stick nation prophecy. It's in Ezekiel 37. Quite lengthy, but I'm just going to read a little bit of it. You can go ahead and read chapter 37 on your own if you get a chance. So let me go down. I'll start in 16. So 37:16 Ezekiel, and you, son of man, take a stick for yourself and write on it for Yehuda and for the children of Yisrael, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. So these are the scattered sheep. This is mankind. This is the Gentiles. We're talking about Ephraim going out, mixing with mankind, and becoming a nation. Nations. Becoming nations. Then bring them together for yourself into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, won't you show us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus said the Master Yahuwah, see, I am taking the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I shall give them to him with the stick of Yehuda, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks on which you write shall be in your hand before their eyes, and speak to them. Thus said the Master Yahuwah, see, I am taking the children of Israel from among the nations, among mankind, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and I shall bring them into their land. And I shall make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Yisrael, and one sovereign shall be sovereign over them. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns. So there you go. Now you can see Yahuwah's plan. So his plan is to take the line of the priesthood line of Adam and Kua and Seth, okay, and Shem and Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob, and Ephraim, and send it out to all the nations, mix it all up so that everybody's Israel. And then he's going to refine them and bring back those into Eden who he wants to be Yisrael, rulers with him for eternity. And so there's not going to be two reigns. There's not going to be a northern tribes and the southern tribes, Ephraim or Yehuda. Okay, there's just going to be one priestly line like he created in the beginning with Adam and Kua to rule over mankind with him. So don't forget, man has a shared essence and a shared character. And also, we share Yahuwah's essence as well, which is love. And he wants there no longer to be two nations. In other words, no priestly line and mankind, but he wants to have one. Be no longer be divided into two reigns. That's why he did that. So they were, in other words, mankind was going to be converted by Adam and Kua's line. Eventually they were going to be taught. They were going to be, learn about Yahuwah. They were going to come to Yahuwah, and they were all going to know Yahuwah and all worship and follow Yahuwah. Okay, but it all got blown apart, and so he's regathering, he's redoing it differently, to where he's going to come back and complete what he started before all that happened. Did Yahuwah plan for all that to happen that way? Absolutely did. Yes, he did. Who knows the mind of Yahuwah? So take a look back over to Zechariah 14:9 now. It says, 14:9 says, and Yahuwah shall be sovereign over all the Eretz. In that Yom, there shall be one Yahuwah, and his name one. So everybody's going to know about Yahuwah. Nobody's going to have to teach anybody about Yahuwah in the eternal reign. Everybody's going to know Yahuwah, and everybody's going to worship and praise Yahuwah, serve Yahuwah as one. Yeah, you're still going to have the priestly line, but it's going to be called the bride. Okay, that's going to be the bride in the eternal reign. It's going to be the assembly, the body of Yahusha, one body, which Yahuwah will dwell in his body. And then you're going to have the rest of the chosen, the election out there, living as mankind, representing mankind, but immortal. If everybody sees what I'm saying. All right, let's look now over here. You can kind of see what I'm saying here. Look at Ecclesiastes 12:13. It says, we'll go up to 12. Go 12, 12, and 13. And besides these, my son, be warned, the making of many books has no end, and much study is wearying of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. For Elohim, fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. See that? To all mankind. So that proves what I'm saying about mankind. This applies to all mankind. Okay, so look at Galatians real quick off of that. So Galatians, it'll be Galatians. Galatians 3:22. So Galatians 3:22 says, but the scripture has shut up all mankind under sin, that the promise by belief in Yahushua Mashiach might be given to those who believe. But the scripture has shut up all mankind under sin. See that? So mankind. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. See, so now you can see that the use of the word mankind means Gentile. It means nations, including the priestly line. Yehuda. What line did the Mashiach come from? He came from Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda. He was the lion of Yehuda, which is the priestly line coming up through Adam and Kua and Abraham and Jacob and Ephraim, all through there. Not Ephraim, but Yehuda. Coming up through the Yehuda. Jacob and Yehuda. The priestly line. So Ephraim's mankind. So they're the Gentiles. All right, let me get that straight. Got to keep it straight. All right, so let's look here now at Acts 13 then. Acts 13:44. And on the next Shabbat, almost all the city came together to hear the word of Elohim. But when the Yehudim saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy, and contracting and speaking evil, they opposed what Paul said. But speaking boldly, Paul and Barnabas said, it was necessary that the word of Elohim should be spoken to you first. Speaking of the Yehudim, the priestly line. But since you thrust it away and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, you're being sarcastic. See, we turn to the nations. We turn to the nations. For so the Master has commanded us, I have set you to be a light to the nations, that you should be for deliverance to the ends of the earth. And when the nations heard this, they were glad and praised the word of Yahuwah. And as many as had been appointed to everlasting life believed. They believed. All right. So Yahuwah knows who are his, and they were appointed to everlasting life. And so now they can believe. The nations, the nations, the nations, the nations, Ephraim, Gentiles, mankind, they are appointed to everlasting life. And so when they hear the word spoken in their ears, they believe. They don't even have to see the miracles, signs, and wonders. They can just hear the word of truth spoken, and they will believe because they were appointed for everlasting life before the foundations of the world. So the election happened before the foundations of the world was laid. So Yahuwah has all this planned out. He planned it all out. He spoke it. He planned it. And he's doing it. Can we follow along? Can we see his plan written out fairly plainly throughout the scriptures, what he's doing? So let's look then at Acts 17. Acts 17, verse 24 says, Yahuwah who made the world and all that is in it, this one being master of heaven and earth, does not dwell in dwellings made with hands. Of course not. He's omnipotent. He's everywhere all the time. He doesn't have to leave one place to go to another. He's already there. He's everywhere. Nor is he served with men's hands as in needing any. Himself given to all life and breath and all else. Get that? So he's given everybody life and breath and everything else. So if you can accept it at this point in your walk, Yahuwah is the very breath you're breathing right now. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, having established beforehand the times and the boundaries of their dwelling. So he made the nations, he made men of one blood. What does that mean? That means mankind. We're mankind. We all have the same blood. There's only one blood. So the two, the mankind and the priestly line, that was not different. They were the same. They were made by one blood. They were all made out of the dust, formed out of the dust, along with the beasts were formed out of the dust. Remember, we read that back in Genesis. Of one blood, right? So this is why he's doing what he's doing, so that all of Yisrael shall be delivered. Okay. Let's go to Acts 28. Acts 28. Stick with me, y'all. We're going to get deeper. Don't go nowhere. Acts 28:22. And we think it right to hear from you what you think, for indeed concerning this sect, we know that it is spoken against everywhere. And having appointed him a day, many came to him where he was staying. This is speaking of Paul, to whom he was explaining, earnestly witnessing about the reign of Yahuwah, and persuading them concerning Yahusha from both the Torah of Moses and the prophets from morning until evening. So here we find out that Paul was not teaching the nations, mankind, out of the King Jimmy. And he was teaching them out of the Torah of Moses and the prophets. That's all they had back then. They didn't have no King Jimmy back then. And some indeed were persuaded by what was said, but some believed not. And disagreeing with one another, they began to leave. After Paul had spoken one word, the Ruach HaKodesh rightly spoke through Yashayahu, the prophet, to our fathers. So they didn't like hearing this, saying, go to this people and say, hearing you shall hear, but by no means understand, and seeing you shall see, but by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, and with their ears they heard heavily, and they have closed their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn back, meaning repent, and I should heal them, meaning deliver them. Therefore let it be known to you that the deliverance of Elohim has been sent to the nations, and they shall hear. And they shall hear. Wow. So Ephraim is going to hear, wake up, and cry on Mount Ephraim. Let's go back to Zion and worship Yahuwah. What are we doing? How do we get here? What are we doing? So the nations will wake up and they will hear, the mankind. Matthew 12:14. Matthew 12:14 says, but the Prussian went out and took counsel against him so as to destroy him. They wanted to kill Yahusha. But Yahusha, knowing it, withdrew from there, and a large throngs followed him, and he healed them all, and warned them not to make him known, in order that what was spoken by Yashayahu the prophet might be concluded, saying, see my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my being did delight. I shall put my Ruach upon him, and he shall declare right ruling to the nations, mankind, Gentiles, Ephraim. He shall not strive nor cry out, nor shall anyone hear his voice in the streets. A crushed reed he shall not break, and smoking flex he shall not quench, till he brings forth right ruling forever. And the nations shall trust in his name. And the nations shall trust in his name. Is the priestly line trusting in his name right now? They're not doing that right now. They will, though. Right now, though, Ephraim is. The nations is. The Gentiles is. Mankind is. Priestly lines lost. They're still confused. You seeing it? All right. So who is the Gentiles? Mankind. Mankind. He formed in Genesis chapter 1. Look at Matthew 22:32. Oh, we already went over that one. So let's go to Matthew 28:16. 28:16 through 20. It says this, And the 11 Talmudim went away into Galilee. This is after his resurrection, Yahushua's resurrection, to the mountain which Yahushua had appointed for them to meet him in Galilee after he resurrected. And when they saw him, they bowed to him, but some doubted. Some doubted. And Yahushua came up, and that's the 11 Talmudim, his closest followers. Some of them doubted. And Yahushua came up and spoke to them, saying, now how could they still doubt, man? That blows my mind. He appeared to them within locked walls, and they were hiding in Jerusalem. He came through the walls and appeared to them, let him touch him and everything. I mean, that's mind-blowing that some of them still doubted. But they did not receive the Ruach HaKodesh yet, so they were still partially or fully in the mind of the flesh. And Yahushua came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make Talmudim of all the nations. Of all the nations. All means all. Okay? And the way that you do that is immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Ruach HaKodesh, which is only one name, which is Yahushua, teaching them to guard all that I have commanded you, which is keep the commandments. And see, I am with you always until the end of the age, until lights out, to the end of the age of flesh, which will be after the 7,000th year. So, mind-blowing here. The commission is go out and make Talmudim or students or pupils of all the nations. Go out into the nations, man. Make Talmudim of mankind. So he's trying to bring mankind and the priestly line all into this to one being, to be one person. One man out of the two men. So one man out of the mankind and the priestly line. One man out of both men. Out of both creations. See that? Some may say, why is he doing that? And I say, ask Yahuwah. Don't ask me, ask Yahuwah why he's doing that. I ain't going to ask him. I'm just reading his word of truth here, and it's pretty clear that's what he's doing. At least it is for me. So Romans 3:27 through 31 says, where then is the boasting? Is it shut out by what? Torah or works? No, but by the Torah of belief. Belief in what? Yahushua's blood. That Yahushua's blood takes away your sins, because the animal blood didn't. So you can't believe in animal blood sacrifices to remove your sins or blot out your sins, but you have to believe in Yahushua's blood that'll blot out your sins. For we reckon that a man is declared right by belief in the power of Yahushua's blood, not in his existence. Without works of Torah, meaning the instructions for animal blood offerings, sacrifices. That was part of the old priesthood. Or is he the Yahuwah of the Yehudim only? The priestly line only? And not also of the nations? Of mankind? Yes, of the nations also. See that? Since it is one Yahuwah who shall declare right the circumcised by belief and the uncircumcised through belief. Do we then nullify the Torah through the belief? Let it not be. On the contrary, we establish the Torah. Belief in the power of the blood of the Lamb of Yahuwah, not in the power of animal blood of the old priesthood. That does not work. Okay. it goes well beyond believing in his existence. You know, for one thing, if you believed in Yahuwah's existence, then you would fear him because you would understand his power, his might, and therefore you would be obedient to him. You would be afraid to disobey him if you really believed in him, because then you would have the knowledge of his power and what he can do. And so you would believe in him and the proof of that would be your obedience to his commands. If you're not obeying the 10 commandments and you don't think you have to, then you don't believe in Yahuwah. There's no way you believe in him. You wouldn't be talking like that if you did. So that kind of talk proves you do not believe in Yahuwah. Okay, look at Romans 10:9. So 10:9 through 13 says that if you confess with your mouth the Master Yahusha and believe in your heart that Yahuwah has raised him from the dead, you shall be delivered. For with the heart one believes to righteousness, and one professes with the mouth, and so is delivered. Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Because there is no distinction between Yahudai, and Greek or Gentile nations. For the same master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. So dig that, man. There's no distinction between Yahudai and Greek or Gentiles. Why? Because he sent out Israel into the world, and they mixed with all mankind, and now we are mankind. Okay, and so the election can come out of all the nations. See that? Not just out of the priestly line, but out of mankind can come the election. And those who are the sheep of Yahuwah will be delivered, come out of all the nations, because Israel has now become mankind, has become the nations. That's powerful stuff, isn't it? Look at Romans 11:25. Well, let's skip that one for just a second. Let's go to, let's go to Galatians again, chapter 3, 22 through 29. And it says, but the scripture has shut up all mankind under sin, that the promise by belief in Yahushua Mashiach might be given to those who believe. Believe in what? His sacrifice, the blood sacrifice of Yahusha, not animal blood. But before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah. So before belief came, before Yahuwah sacrificed himself and shed his blood, we were being guarded under Torah, or practicing with animal blood to accept the blood sacrifice of the Mashiach, the Lamb of Yahuwah. Having been shut up for the belief being about to be revealed. So Torah then, or the instructions of the old priesthood would have been the trainer till the reality came, which was Yahusha's shedding of Yahusha's blood, the real true sacrifice for sin that worked. Therefore, the Torah became our trainer to Mashiach in order to be declared right by belief in the power of Yahusha's blood. See that? Not just in belief that you believe in him. And after belief has come, we are no longer under a trainer. We no longer have to do the animal blood, because belief has come, which is the belief in the Messiah's blood, the power of the Messiah's blood to wash away your sins. For you are all sons of Yahuwah through belief in Mashiach Yahusha. All, A-L-L, all of mankind. For as many of you who were immersed into Mashiach have put on Mashiach. There is not a Yehudai nor Greek. There is not slave nor free. There is not male and female. for you are all one in Mashiach Yahusha. All right, so now we have become one in the body, in the assembly. We are no longer priestly line and mankind, or Gentile and Jew, or whatever you want to say, Yehudai and Greek. There's no more two men. There's one man. He made one man out of the two, out of the priestly line and out of mankind. They created in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 when he created the priestly line. That was the job of the priestly line, was to make mankind one, make one out of the two. You see that? And he kept failing, so the only way he could do it was to come and do it himself. And he did. He made one out of the two. He says so. We're getting ready to get to it. And if you are of Mashiach, then you are the seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. So there you go. You're Israel. You're the bride. You're the body. If you have Mashiach in you. Pretty clear. All right, so look at Ephesians now. So Ephesians, very, very powerful witness of all this. Read the whole book if you get a chance. And while you have this study still fresh on your mind, read the entire book of Ephesians, keeping this, what we've been talking about, in mind. But we don't have time to do that this evening, but I'm going to definitely skim through this for you. So let's look at Ephesians 1:3. It says, "Blessed be the Yahuwah and Father of our Master Yahushua Mashiach, who has blessed us with every Ruach-like blessing in the heavenlies in Mashiach, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be Kadesh, set apart, and blameless before him in love, having previously established us to adoption as sons through Yahushua Mashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his desire." So there you go. So now let's look over here at 2, in the chapter 2. We'll go to 14 and 16. Well, actually, we should probably go up to 11. So Ephesians chapter 2:11. "Therefore remember that you, formerly Gentiles in the flesh," so you were mankind, you were the Gentiles before the mixing with the seed of Abraham, right? Before Ephraim went out and mixed into the nations and became the nations, who are called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands, that at the time you were without Mashiach, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no expectation and without Yahuwah in the world. So we are Gentiles. You weren't part of the citizenship of Israel. You weren't part of the priestly line. You were just the nations, Gentiles. You were mankind without knowledge of Yahuwah. You had without Yahuwah in the world. You had no knowledge of Yahuwah. You weren't worshiping him, but you weren't taught yet by the priestly line. You were the mankind. See that? Which was the Gentiles or mankind was described in Genesis 1:26 and 27. Now, Israel, or the priestly line, was described in Genesis 2:7, with the forming of Adam and later on Kua, after he created the Garden of Eden and set Adam into the Garden of Eden. Then he created Eve from the rib of Adam. She's still part of the dust of the carbon copy world, though. But now, in Mashiach Yahusha, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of the Mashiach. For he is our peace, who has made both one. See that? Has made both one. And having broken down the partition of the barrier between the priestly line and mankind, the Gentiles, having abolished in his flesh the opposition, he became flesh, the opposition, the Gentiles, mankind, from Genesis 1, 26 and 27. The law prescribed in procedures, that's animal blood sacrificing, so as to create in himself one, which went through the priestly line, so as to create in himself one renewed man from the two, thus making peace, and to completely restore to favor both of them to Yahuwah in one body through the stake, having destroyed the opposition by it, the flesh, the opposition, mankind. You see that? So Yahusha, the Yehudim, the priestly line were priests. Yehudim or Adam and Chua, that priestly line, were priests and set apart nation. And the Gentiles, the nations, or Ephraim or mankind, were separate from the priestly line. They weren't part of it. Okay, and they were split into two nations or two men. But now, because of the blood of Mashiach and the coming of the Mashiach, he has made those two. He has closed that gap and made those two one. So now it's one. So the nations, Yehuda, Ephraim, is one through the blood of the Mashiach. That's what it said. He who has made both one, having broken down the partition of the barrier, so as to create in himself one renewed man from the two, thus making peace. Thus making peace. We're all the same. Mishpaka, we're all the same now through the blood of Mashiach. So you don't generally war with your mishpaka, with your one, with the people you're one with. Not in the general sense of warring. All right, look at Colossians 1:15 through 29. It says, who is in the likeness of the invisible Yahuwah, the firstborn of all creation. He was the light, spoken about in Genesis 1-5. Firstborn of all creation, which means he created a body for himself. Did Yahuwah create Yahuwah? Absolutely not. Did Yahuwah create a body of light for himself before he created anything else? He absolutely did. Because through him were created all that are in the Shemayim and that are on the Eretz, visible and invisible, whether thrones or rulerships or principalities or authorities. All have been created through him and for him. And he is before all, and in him all hold together. And he is the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that he might become the one who is first in all, because in him all the fullness was well pleased to dwell, and through him to complete and restore to favor all to himself, whether on Eretz or in the Shemayim, having made peace through the blood of his stake. So there you go again. So he made peace between the priestly line and all of creation, all of the carbon copy world. And he had to put there, and he had somewhere for the priestly line to fall to. See what I'm saying? So when we look at Revelation 7:14, 7:4, it starts telling us about numbering the people who are sealed. There's 144,000 are sealed out of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So this would be the priestly line that he's sealing to be his body. Okay. And then they're all coming from the tribes. Well, all the tribes are scattered out into the nations. They're the Gentiles, or Ephraim, right? Even Yehuda, they're scattered too. And so out of the nations then will come this 144,000. So this will be the cream of the crop. This will be his chosen, his elect, to be his bride, to be his body for eternity that he'll dwell. These are the stones that make up his temple, third temple, not made by hands. So somewhere out there in the world, among mankind, is Ephraim and Israel. And so sealed out of all the tribes of the children of Israel, it's 144,000. 12,000 from Yehuda, 12,000 from Reuben, 12,000 from Gad, 12,000 from Natiya, 12,000 from Manasseh, 12,000 from Simon, 12,000 for Levites, 12,000 from Shakar, 12 from Zebulun, 12,000 from Joseph, 10,000 from Benjamin. We're all sealed. So this is the bride, and that's scattered throughout the world, hidden in the field. The world's the field, and so the treasured possessions hidden in the field. We have to find the pearl hidden in the field, the large pearl, otherwise known as the lost sheep, the bride. And then it says in verse 9, and after this I looked and I saw a great throng which no one was able to count, out of all the nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes, immortality, and palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Yahuwah, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And a great throng which nobody could count, was able to count. Okay, and so they will be brought out of the nations as well. Okay, and they'll be in everlasting, eternal life as well. And so these people here will make up the nations, and you can't even count them. So there's going to be nations. There's going to be sovereigns in each nation. Yahuwah and his bride will rule out of Jerusalem, and the sovereigns will come and worship Yahuwah and represent the nations that they're from. Okay, and the millennium reign, and then into the eternal reign as well. So then Yahuwah's plan will be completed. So he will have finished what he had set out to do. Very interesting, right? Okay, so go to Romans 11. Romans 11. 25 through 36 says, for I do not wish you to be ignorant of this secret, brothers, lest you should be wise in your own estimation, that hardening in part has come over Yisrael until the entirety of the nations has come in. For all those that we just read about in Revelation 7. And so all Yisrael shall be delivered, as it has been written, The deliverer shall come out of Zion, and he shall turn away wickedness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Truly, as regards the Besorah, they are enemies for your sake. But concerning the choice, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of Yahuwah are not to be repented of. For as you also at one time disobeyed Yahuwah, but now have obtained compassion through their disobedience, so also these have now disobeyed, that through the compassion shown you, they also might obtain compassion. For Yahuwah has shut all up to disobedience, in order to have compassion on all. On all what? All mankind. Oh, the depth of riches and wisdom and knowledge of Yahuwah. That's for sure. How unsearchable his judgments and untraceable his ways. Wow, that's so true. For who has known the mind of Yahuwah? Or who has become his counselor? Or who first gave to him, and it shall be given back to him? Because of him, and through him, and to him are all, to whom be esteemed forever. Amen. There you go. So that pretty much tells the story. This is Yahuwah doing all this. He spoke it, he planned it, and he's doing it. And you better believe his will be done in the end. Let me see. Look at Ephesians, back to Ephesians one time. Go to Ephesians 4. Go through Ephesians 4, 1 through 16. I call upon you, therefore, I, the prisoner of the master, to walk worthily of the calling with which you were called, with all humility and meekness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, being eager to guard the unity of the Ruach in the bond of peace. One body and one Ruach, as you also were called in one expectation of your calling. One master, one belief, one immersion, one Yahuwah, and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. But to each of us favor was given according to the measure of the gift of Mashiach. That is why it says, when he went up on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to men. But what does he went up mean, except that he also first went down into the lower parts of the Eretz? He who went down is also the one who went up far above all the Shemaim to fill all. And he himself gave some as emissaries, some of prophets, some of evangelists, and some as shepherds and teachers for the perfecting of the Kadeshim, the set apart ones, to the work of service, to a building up of the body of the Mashiach. So Yahuwah is in everything, and everything is in Yahuwah. Until we all come to the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Yahuwah, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Mashiach, so that we should no longer be children tossed and borne about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of men and cleverness, to the craftiness of leading astray, but maintaining the truth in love. We grow up in all respects into him who is the head, Mashiach, from whom the entire body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the working by which each part does its share, causes growth of the body for the building up of itself in love. So there you go. So we're going to be, we want the two to become one in Mashiach, in love. Okay, so I'm going to finish this up now this evening into Matthew. Go to Matthew 25. So Matthew 25:31. Matthew 25:31 to 46, and we'll finish it up. Here we're going to see here in this little passage that Israel restored, when restored, will lead the nations in worship of Yahuwah, who will reign from Jerusalem forever. So Matthew 25:31. And when the Son of Adam comes in his esteem, and all the set apart messengers with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem. Okay, so his set apart messengers are Malachim. So when Yahushua returns, he's going to return on a white horse. They're going to be on white horses and white robes. Yahushua is going to be in a white robe with red, representing blood. Okay. And on a white horse. And as he comes back to the Mount of Olives, he's going to descend back onto the Mount of Olives. That's how he left. That's how he's going to come back. All right, back to the exact same place that he left from when he ascended, and that was the Mount of Olives. He's coming back with his Malachim, which is his calling here. When Adam comes, Son of Adam in his esteem, and all the set apart messengers with him. Messengers are Malachim. There'll be a loud voice. There'll be like a trumpet, and the dead Mashiach will raise. Okay, and those who remain alive at the time of his second coming, which is right at the end of the right before the end of the Battle of Armageddon, there, they will be changed in the blink of an eye, and both the dead and Mashiach and those who remain alive will have their immortal bodies, and they will, at the same time, they're going to be gathered together up with Yahushua as he comes back with his army of messengers on white horses down to the Mount of Olives, and then there's going to be a great earthquake. Okay, so this right here explains to you that he's not rapturing a bunch of people up at a second coming. Then on his third coming, he's going to come back with all those people he raptured. That would be a third coming. There's no third coming. There's only a second coming. And these people that he's coming back with are the set apart messengers with him, which are Malachim, his army in the Shemaim of Malachim. Then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem, which is the throne of Daud. He'll sit in Jerusalem and rule from Jerusalem during the millennium reign and forever. But he'll be in the new city in the eternal reign. And he'll be living in his body, in his third temple, not made by hands. So during the millennium reign, he'll be sitting on the throne of Daud. And all the nations, here it is, mankind, and all the nations shall be gathered before him, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on the right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the sovereign shall say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the reign prepared for you from the foundation of the world. See, he chose them before the foundation of the world, which means the election was before the foundation of the world. See it? For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Then the righteous shall answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and we fed you, or thirsty and gave you to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and took you in, or naked and clothed you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and we came to you? And the sovereign shall answer and say to them, Truly I say to you, and as so far as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. And shall then also say, and then he shall also say to those in the left hand, Go away from me, accursed ones, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his messengers. So that shows you right there that the devil and these fallen angels, the demons, are going to be thrown into the lake of fire. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you did not take me in. Was naked and you did not clothe me. I was sick in prison and you did not visit me. Then they shall also answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, or stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not serve you? Then he shall answer to them, saying, Truly I say to you, in so far as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into everlasting life. So here, this everlasting punishment would be everlasting death, or the outer darkness, which means non-existence. But the righteous into everlasting life, which would be the light. Okay, and you will live forever. So everlasting punishment would be everlasting death, and the only other option would be then the righteous going into everlasting life. See it? So everlasting death, everlasting life. That's what everlasting punishment is. All right, so you'll be in the outer darkness, and which would mean non-existence for you. Everlasting life means you're in the light, and the light is life, and so you get everlasting life, which is love. So we get to live in absolution of love forever and ever, with no end. Powerful stuff. Okay, so that's the end of that study this evening. I hope everybody learned as much as I did. That's a very good study. One thing that I realized was that there are wrongdoers in both Yehudim and the Gentiles, in Israel and the Gentiles, which is Ephraim. There's senders in both, and so it's not just one line that's going to be delivered, as a lot of people try to teach. Okay, it's all nations. All of Israel shall be delivered. Okay, so within all the nations, we're going to find somebody that's going to be delivered, I'm sure, and probably many more, because it says that you can't even count them. The number of them cannot be counted. We do know that the bride, though, the priestly line, if you will be 144,000. But the other ones that are there, the nations, Ephraim, mankind, that's going to be there as well, the number we cannot count. All right. And like I say, the bride will live in the new city with the Ruach, and he will dwell his bride. They'll be his body forever. They'll be the okay. So in eternal reign, the bride will live in the new city, Jerusalem, with the Ruach. And so it will be his body, and he will dwell his body forever. in the new city. Mankind will live out onto the new earth, mankind, but they will be immortal as well. Okay, so the question then, to answer the question that we first asked in the beginning of this study is, who are the Gentiles, right? And so the answer to that question is simply mankind. Mankind are the Gentiles. And who is the firstborn of mankind? Well, Ephraim. That's who. And the firstborn of mankind is defined in Genesis 1, 26 and 27. The giants that were on the earth after the deluge, or after the flood, okay, came from the recessive gene of one of the wives of one of the three sons of Noah. That's where Goliath and his sons came from. And David slain those giants in those days. In his day, he was a giant killer. A lot of people just understand that King David killed Goliath. They don't realize that he killed the other giants as well. He was a giant killer, a giant slayer. He wiped out the last of the giant race as we know it. Now, could there be a recessive gene popping up nowadays? Yeah, there's people out there saying they're seeing 10-foot people around the world. Some soldiers in Iraq claim they saw 10-foot, giants over there. Who am I to doubt them? If they did actually see these giants, then they're coming from a recessive gene passed through one of Noah's son's wives, as we went over earlier. So, yeah, it could be getting back to the days of Noah when there were Nephilim on the earth, and messengers, Malachim, actually coming down and mating with women. Or there could be a lot of crazy stuff going on, like DNA splicing between animals and humans, creating tents or vessels for demons. Who knows? Trying to create a body for the Satan to inhabit and dwell in as the anti-Mashiach. Who knows? Could be a lot of things, But we can speculate all night long, which we're not going to do. But very good study. I really enjoyed it, and I hope all of you did too. And like I said, study on your own. Come up to your own conclusions, but don't get lost. Don't get out there and get lost and start believing all kinds of crazy stuff. We got to stay within the perimeters of the knowledge of Yahuwah that we're given. We can't go out and outside sources and go crazy and get lost. And then people think we're nuts. We're not doing anybody any favors that way. We have to always do our studying privately as we progress, and we start investigating and researching other things. And then when we're around the assembly or around other people, especially young, new people, beginners, babes, stick to the Basur of Yahuwah. Just talk to them about the Basur of Yahusha. That's it. And that's all they really need to know at that point in their beginning of their early walk with Yahuwah. Don't confuse them with all that other stuff. All right. That shows you love them, you care about them. You don't want to get them confused. They can't eat that meat and potatoes like that. They'll choke on it. You see people out there believing all kinds of stuff, and they're all mixed up, and that's why people shoved that meat and potatoes down their throat while they were still supposed to be drinking milk, and it messed them all up. And it's hard to get them out of that once they grow up in it and become mature, and that's what they grew up on. It's hard to correct them. So be careful what you're doing. All right. Other than that, thank you everybody for coming on. Thank you people in the chat room for chatting up a storm. I appreciate y'all studying with me, as always, more than you'll ever know. And other than that, I'll see y'all next week when we'll have another exciting study. Next week, I'm sure Yahushua will lay something on my heart to share and teach us as we go through his word of truth. And don't forget about tomorrow. We have a scripture study group tomorrow called the Nazarene Assembly. And it's very fun. We gain a lot of knowledge of Yahuwah out of it, and we worship Yahuwah and study and gain knowledge of Yahuwah and get to congregate and assemble among the Nazarene, the beloved of Yahuwah, which is always an honor. And so if you've never been there, come on. If you've been there, come on back. Everybody should be there every week. It gives you an escape, man. I mean, you get to study and worship and praise Yahuwah on Shabbat and congregate with the beloved of Yahuwah. And that keeps you honest and keeps you obedient to the fourth commandment. And so it's a lot of help that way as well, besides learning about the scriptures of truth. And a lot of people come on. We have 10 openings, a live broadcast, and the chat room's still available as well. Or you can just hide, and be an observer. That's fine too. All right, so come on tomorrow, same channel, Sparking You is Yah. 12 o'clock p.m., 12 o'clock noon p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on this channel. Nazarene Assembly, Scripture Study Group. Join us. Please join us. I know Yahuwah will be looking for you to be there. Show him how much you love him and assemble with his people. And remember to stay in love with Yahusha HaMashiach. So long, beloved of Yahuwah. So long, Nazarene, beloved of Yahuwah. So long, everybody. See y'all next week. Peace, joy, and love to every single person that watches this video and study. So long, folks. See you next week.